Chapter 693. Magic Weapon Against Magic Weapon. Traceless blood was extremely fast. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The assassin had not given Violet Cloud any opportunities to activate her skills. Traceless blood had investigated Violet Cloud, so he knew the cleric was very strong. If he gave her even a breath of time, it was possible that his assassination attempt would fail. Hence, he had taken his time, slowly and carefully approaching Violet Cloud and using shadow steps at its maximum range. This way, by the time Violet Cloud's senses reacted, it would be too late. The dagger covered in engraved, black runes tore through the air, colliding with Violet Cloud's back. With his first strike landing successfully, Traceless Blood immediately used the most powerful skill of assassins, Absolute Strike, instead of a different skill like Backstab. Unlike Backstab, Absolute Strike did not require any specific attack motions, allowing for a faster strike. Suddenly, Traceless Blood transformed into a black light that pierced through Violet Cloud. After arriving in front of the cleric, Traceless Blood spun in midair, using his dagger's most powerful additional skill, Flowing Light, on the cleric. Flowing Light's single target damage was even higher than Absolute Strike. The skill was also much faster, the entire process ending in less than a heartbeat. You! Traceless Blood's eyes widened as he looked at his dagger in disbelief. No matter how much strength he put into his arm, his dagger could not pierce Violet Cloud's pale golden robes. It was as if her robes were made of adamantine. You are quite impressive. If I hadn't activated absolute space at the first sign of danger, I would have most likely been dead by now, Violet Cloud said as she looked at the dagger with black runes. Those black runes looked very familiar to her. They were very similar to the runes unique to magic weapons. If the dagger wounded her, the consequences would be unimaginable. Since his attack had failed, although Traceless Blood was shocked, he immediately turned and fled. He abandoned the idea of attacking Violet Cloud as he knew that he could no longer inflict damage on the cleric. Moreover, he did not know the duration of the cleric's absolute space. While she had that protection, he was no more than a living target. His only options were to run and hide. You can't escape. Violet Cloud did not dare give Traceless Blood an opportunity to escape. Absolute space had a relatively long cooldown. If she allowed the assassin to get away, she would not be able to fend him off should he come back to attack her again. Waving her finger, she used the Tier 1 skill, Star's Guidance. Immediately, a powerful gravitational force pulled at Traceless Blood, dragging him back towards Violet Cloud. What kind of skill is this? This was the first time Traceless Blood had seen such an unconventional skill. He felt like small threads had wrapped around him, zealously pulling him towards his enemy. As a last resort, Traceless Blood used his control removal skill, removing the effects of Star's Guidance. Sacred Seal. Seeing that her attack had failed, Violet Cloud used Sacred Seal, a marking skill of clerics. Suddenly, a sacred light appeared on Traceless Blood's forehead, preventing him from entering stealth. Damn it! She knows a skill like this as well. Traceless Blood began to panic. Not being able to enter stealth was extremely disadvantageous for him. With this, he would not be able to sneak up on Violet Cloud later in the battle. Shortly after Traceless Blood began to flee, a black figure dashed towards him. Don't even think of escaping. Shadow Sword lifted Tempest's breath and used charge at the assassin. Since Traceless Blood had already used his control removal skill, he had no choice but to use Wind Steps, utilizing the 1 second of invulnerability the skill provided to block Shadow Sword's charge. Turning around, Traceless Blood then flipped his dagger into a reverse grip and plunged the weapon into Shadow Sword's abdomen. Kidney Strike. As long as the skill forced the berserker into a fainted state for 2 or 3 seconds, it would be enough for him to get away. Realizing that he could not block the incoming attack in time, Shadow Sword activated Whirlwind Slash, swinging Tempest's breath at Traceless Blood. Shadow Sword fully intended to trade hit for hit. Seeing this, Traceless Blood had no choice but to halt his attack and retreat immediately, evading Shadow Sword's Whirlwind Slash. He was merely an assassin. How could his normal attacks deal more damage than a berserker? Moreover, he wore leather armor, whereas berserkers wore plate armor. Even if his weapon were a magic weapon, a head-on clash could end with mutual destruction. Moreover, he currently occupied the rear line of the enemy's formation. There were no healers to recover his HP. However, Shadow Sword was different. He had the assistance of a healer like Violet Cloud. The Berserker had no fear of a battle of attrition. Hence, when Shadow Sword attacked, there was no fear in his eyes at all. After evading Shadow Sword's attack, Traceless Blood immediately turned and fled, having no desire to continue his clash with the Berserker. His opponents included an expert cleric and an expert Berserker. He had very little confidence in defeating either one in a frontal assault, to begin with, not to mention fighting both simultaneously. However, Shadow Sword had no intentions of letting the assassin get away so easily. Immediately, he followed his failed attack with Break and Thunderclap. When the movement speed reduction effects of both skills were compounded, Traceless Blood lost any hope of escaping the Berserker. Traceless Blood had no choice but to enter a melee with Shadow Sword. Pang! When the two weapons collided, dazzling sparks scattered into the surroundings. The impact forced Traceless Blood to retreat by 3 steps, a grim expression appearing on his face when he noticed his opponent still standing steadily in his original location. Why does he have so much strength? Traceless Blood acknowledged that his own strength attribute was quite high, even slightly higher than an ordinary Berserker. Yet, against Shadow Sword's attack, this Berserker's strength overwhelmed him. The magic weapon he wielded granted him a significant amount of strength. Even if Shadow Sword was superior in terms of strength, the Berserker's attack should not have been able to force him back by 3 steps. Even now, his hands still felt numb from the exchange. Zero Wing actually possesses so many top-tier experts. Smiling, Violet Cloud finished chanting her incantation. She then pointed her finger at Traceless Blood. Tier 1 spell, Black Coffin. A pitch-black barrier suddenly wrapped around Traceless Blood. Having no other choice, Traceless Blood used Vanish. After activating Vanish, he would become invulnerable to all attacks momentarily. The skill would also place him in a forced invisibility state for 3 seconds, followed by a stealth state. Even Sacred Seal would not be effective during forced invisibility's 3 seconds, and these 3 seconds were more than enough to put a huge distance between himself and the 2 experts. Vanish. Shadow Sword had no counter for this skill either. This was the most powerful life-saving skill an assassin, one of the 12 major classes, possessed. Unless one had a silencing skill, it was extremely difficult to kill an expert assassin. 3 seconds later, Traceless Blood reappeared far from Shadow Sword. At this range, even the Berserker's charge would not reach him. Moreover, Assassin was an agility-focused class. In terms of movement speed, an assassin was much faster than a Berserker. In addition, Traceless Blood also possessed equipment that enhanced his speed. There was no way that Shadow Sword could catch up to him at this point. This was also why Traceless Blood had been able to escape after his assassination attempt on Galaxy Past had failed. What's this? Traceless Blood suddenly noticed a black magic array beneath his feet. Although Traceless Blood struggled to get away, this black magic array was like a black hole. No matter how much he tried to struggle, he could not escape his fate of being devoured. In the next moment, the black magic array swallowed the assassin whole, his body vanishing without a trace. When Traceless Blood saw light again, he was shocked. How is this possible? He appeared a short distance from Violet Cloud once more. This time, however, he was surrounded by mana balls and barriers of light. The Berserker, Shadow Sword, also stood nearby. He had no options to flee the enclosement of the barriers of light. I already told you that you can't escape. Wielding a pitch-black key in her hand, Violet Cloud smiled at Traceless Blood and said calmly, "You have a magic weapon. I too have a magic weapon." To resolve a serious threat like Traceless Blood, Violet Cloud utilized her final trump card, Star's Reminiscence. The skill was also an Astromancer's main weapon. One of the skill's effects was spatial imprisonment. When activated, Star's Reminiscence would lock a target in the specified space indefinitely. If the target wished to escape their imprisonment, their only option was to shatter the spatial barrier or have the user dispel the skill. Meanwhile, the user's mana determined how much damage the spatial barrier could absorb. It was a skill with terrifying effects. However, the skill also had a very long cooldown of 2 hours. I'm actually going to die like this. Traceless Blood could not help but smile bitterly as he watched the mana balls that covered the sky and the Berserker that eyed him like a fierce tiger. Chapter 694. Zero Wing's Strength. Stoneclaw Mountains, Outer Region. Currently, over 400 finely equipped red names pushed deeper into the Stoneclaw Mountains' inner region. However, as they approached the area, not only were the monsters they encountered stronger, but the number of monsters they encountered also increased. Moreover, the more players there were on the team, the easier it was for monsters to discover them. As a result, battles occurred quite frequently. Initially, the group only encountered 200 to 300 level 35 elite half-orcs and a few special elite and chieftain half-orcs. Now, however, the group frequently encountered groups of 400 to 500 level 38 elite half-orcs led by level 39 half-orc lords. The battles were twice as difficult now. Our luck is terrible. These half-orcs respawn so quickly. If we had known that their respawn rates were so fast, we would not have wasted so much time on recruiting more members and let Traceless Blood get ahead of us. Many team members envied Traceless Blood's team. To have better chances of defeating Zero Wing's main force, they had spent a lot of time trying to recruit more members. Yet, now they had to deal with all of these half-orcs. It would still be some time before they would catch up with Zero Wing's main force. I heard that the battle has started already. I wonder if we can make it in time? We'd be more effective if we arrived late. After all, this is Zero Wing's main force we are talking about. If Traceless Blood cannot wipe them out completely, we can pick up the scraps. Hey, that's Traceless Blood you're talking about. With him on the offensive, do you really think many will get away? I guess that's true. Let's hurry then. Otherwise, this trip will have been pointless. Realizing this, the team began to fight with more fervor. In God's domain, dark players and light players rarely interacted as both sides looked down on each other. To dark players, light players were merely a group of players with little to no combat capabilities. They were only good at grinding dungeons. How could such players compare to their intense lifestyles of blood and blades? Hence, no matter how famous and powerful a guild expert was, in the eyes of red names, these experts were insignificant existences. Red names thought nothing of light guilds. There's a large group of players heading our way, a ranger suddenly reported. It can't be Zero Wing's main force, right? I didn't think that they would give up so quickly. It seems that Zero Wing only amounts to so much. Those rumors about how powerful the guild is are all just a bunch of lies. Many red names began to ridicule and mock the guild. All right, enough. Get ready. Do not let a single player from Zero Wing escape. They were quickly approaching the Stoneclaw Mountains' inner region. Aside from Zero Wing and the ambushing red names, this area was empty of players. Since these players approached them from the inner region, they were, without a doubt, members of Zero Wing. Immediately, the 400-plus red names spread out and waited for Zero Wing to stumble right into their encirclement. Seconds ticked by. Very quickly, several dozen players emerged from the forest, each and every one of them looking miserable. These players panted heavily as they emerged. It was obvious that they had exhausted their stamina from running across a long distance. Just as the red names who lay in wait were about to rush forward and surround these exhausted players, they suddenly realized that something was amiss. Ha! Isn't that Berserker 3 Knives, the person ranking 91st on the red list? Aren't they members of Traceless Blood's team? Why do they look so miserable? A series of questions popped up in everyone's minds. However, they soon found their answers. Suddenly, dozens of arrows and spells burst from the forest. In the blink of an eye, several of the escaping red names fell to the ground and dropped several pieces of their equipment. Meanwhile, 3 Knives, who ran at the forefront of the team, desperately blocked and dodged the incoming attacks. However, 2 arrows still found him, his HP instantly falling by nearly 3,000. You think you can get away with provoking Zero Wing? Minor Wind, who appeared at the tree lean, coldly demanded as he glared at 3 Knives. Behind him, more of Zero Wing's members followed. Since I can't escape, I'll take you to the grave with me. 3 Knives, who was exhausted from running, stopped as he resolved to fight to the death. The fight with Zero Wing's main force had been one-sided punishment. Even their strongest combatant, Traceless Blood, had been easily defeated, not to mention the rest of their team. Less than 5 minutes since their battle with Zero Wing began, they had lost over half their numbers. On the other hand, Zero Wing had not suffered a single death. It was simply inconceivable. At that point, each side's strength had been obvious. They were on completely different levels. Following which, he had issued a command to retreat immediately. When they started retreating, they still had more than 100 players. Now, however, only a dozen or so were alive. Minor Wind had claimed the majority of their members' lives himself. Not only were the Ranger's arrows extremely fast, but he also had ranged AoEs at his disposal. Even Three Knives, who ranked 91st on Star Moon Kingdom's red list, could not defend against all of Minor Wind's attacks, much less the members of his team. Mutual destruction? Minor Wind could not help but laugh. Unfortunately, you are not capable of such a thing. Although Three Knives was strong, superior to even a few members of Zero Wing's main force, the Berserker's skill completion rates were not high. After taking into account the difference in their equipment, Three Knives would rank roughly around 56th in Zero Wing's main force. Of course, this was not taking the power of darkness into consideration. As Minor Wind said so, he knocked his longbow and shot dozens of arrows in quick succession at the remaining red names. Although Three Knives and the other red names tried to approach Minor Wind, over 40 yards stretched them and the Ranger. There was not enough time for them to reach the Ranger. Moreover, of the dozen or so remaining red names, not a single one was a ranged class. Hence, the group had no choice but to weather the rain of arrows as they advanced. However, the Tier 1 weapon, Windchaser, was no trivial item. With it, Minor Wind could deal over -1,500 damage with his normal attacks alone. Three Knives and the others had, at most, a little over 7,000 HP. A few arrows were enough to finish them off. In addition, Minor Wind's arrows would occasionally trigger the quadruple stars effect. Before the dozen or so red names crossed 10 yards, only Three Knives remained alive. Though, the Berserker only had a thread of HP left. The red names lying in ambush were all shocked. With just his bow, Minor Wind single-handedly defeated over a dozen red names before they came anywhere close to him. Even Three Knives was on his last breath. None of the red names lying in wait could believe their eyes. Am I dreaming? Why is that Ranger so powerful? Suddenly, everyone realized that their fellow red names who had gone ahead to ambush Zero Wing were all dead. Moreover, the only survivor had no more than a thread of HP remaining. The gap between the light players in their imaginations and the members of Zero Wing's main force was massive. Oh, you called for reinforcements? Minor Wind shifted his gaze towards the red names hiding in the bushes. With eagle eyes, he noticed more than 400 players. Grinning, he said, "Since Big Sis Fire and the others are not around, let's use you guys to test out my true strength." When the red names heard Minor Wind's words, a sense of doom seeped into their hearts. Minor Wind's attack power was simply too high. Moreover, none of them were confident in escaping his rain of arrows unscathed. Three Knives was the best evidence for the assumption. Suddenly, the leading black-robed elementalist jumped up from his hiding spot and shouted, "Wait!" Chapter 695, Flower of Seven Sins. The black-robed elementalist was level 33. On Star Moon Kingdom's ranking list, he would rank within the top 20. The majority of his equipment consisted of level 30 fine gold rank, while the rest was dark gold rank. Particularly, his staff, which sported a spiral of flame-red runes, was no ordinary dark gold staff. Sunlight Dust. Three Knives was shocked when he saw the black-robed elementalist reveal himself. "What are you doing here?" Among the top 10 experts on Star Moon Kingdom's red list, Traceless Blood ranked 7th. Meanwhile, Sunlight Dust stood above Traceless Blood, ranking 3rd on the red list. The red list was different from the ranking list. Rather than ranking players by their levels, players on the red list were judged by their strength. It was a far more accurate estimation than the God's Domain experts list the Secret Pavilion had created. So your Sunlight Dust, the person who defeated Red Feather, the Star Alliance's apex expert. Minor Wind grew serious as he watched Sunlight Dust. Coldly he asked, "Are you targeting Zero Wing as well?" Red Feather was one of the strongest combatants in the Star Alliance, and was an expert who ranked on the God's Domain experts list. The fact that Sunlight Dust could defeat an apex expert like Red Feather showed that the Elementalist should also rank at the top of Star Moon Kingdom. Hence, even he could not afford to be careless around Sunlight Dust. Even the slightest mistake could result in his death. "Initially, I had only planned to earn a quick buck. Now, however, it seems that won't be possible, Sunlight Dust said as he turned to an empty area near Minor Wind. Shaking his head, he said, Zero Wing really has an abundance of experts. Its fame is not undeserved. Seeing Sunlight Dust's reaction, Three Knives was very confused. With Sunlight Dust's strength and that of his companions, they could make short work of Minor Wind, yet the expert elementalist chose to surrender. A figure suddenly appeared beside Minor Wind. This figure was none other than Flying Shadow, who had been in stealth all this time. I'm impressed. He actually sensed me from so far away, Flying Shadow muttered in surprise. With his standards, aside from their guild leader, Black Flame, only Fire Dance and Violet Cloud could detect him from such a long distance. One could just imagine how powerful Sunlight Dust was. You can't expect this matter to end just because you revealed yourself, right? Flying Shadow growled as he stared at Sunlight Dust. Sunlight Dust and his companions had aimed for Zero Wing from the very beginning. And yet, the instant the situation turned sour, they wanted to just up and leave. It was nothing more than disrespectful. Of course not, Sunlight Dust said calmly. I have very useful information for Zero Wing. Let us offer this as compensation. What do you think? What kind of information? Flying Shadow asked. Currently, only red names and small workshops are targeting Zero Wing. However, this is only the beginning. I've heard that our employer is in the process of hiring the Flower of Seven Sins as well, Sunlight Dust said slowly. At the mention of the name Flower of Seven Sins, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. There were many powers in the virtual gaming world. There were guilds, workshops, and special organizations such as the Flower of Seven Sins. The Flower of Seven Sins was neither a workshop nor a guild. However, the organization's name shook the virtual gaming world. Their fame was so widespread was because the Flower of Seven Sins was an organization specializing in assassination work. They targeted gamers' characters, specifically. As long as a virtual reality game possessed a PvP mechanism, the Flower of Seven Sins would be present. And as long as a player could afford their price, whether it was a monster-like gamer or the guild leader of a superguild, the Flower of Seven Sins could assassinate their target. Moreover, these statements were not without proof. In the past, someone had paid to have the guild leader of a superguild eliminated. In the end, the Flower of Seven Sins completed the task. Back then, the organization had greatly angered said superguild, causing said superguild to declare war against the organization. In the end, however, this superguild ceased to exist. The Flower of Seven Sins tore the guild apart thoroughly and removed its name from the virtual gaming world forever. However, the Flower of Seven Sins' asking price was extremely high. No ordinary person could afford it. Fire Dance suddenly appeared in between the two groups. In a grave tone she asked, Are you telling us the truth? Fire Dance's sudden appearance surprised even Sunlight Dust, causing the elementalist to feel an immense pressure. I actually failed to detect her at such a close distance. Sunlight Dust wore a grave expression as he looked at Fire Dance. This was the first time anyone had come so close to him undetected. He possessed a special skill that granted him greater perception than ordinary players. Otherwise, he would not have so easily discovered Flying Shadow. If Fire Dance attacked him at such a close distance, he would likely die. Zero Wing really is scary. It's no wonder that person is hiring the Flower of Seven Sins. Sunlight Dust finally realized. He then turned to Fire Dance, smiling bitterly as he responded, I guarantee that this information is true. However, as to what that person has requested the Flower of Seven Sins to do, even I have no clue. You may leave. Fire Dance dismissed them with a wave of her hand. Whether Sunlight Dust was lying to her or not, she doubted his words. Experts had their own pride to protect. It was especially true for an apex expert like Sunlight Dust. Following which, Sunlight Dust led his team away. As for Three Knives, he was not allowed to leave with his life. Flying Shadow immediately ended the Berserker's life as negotiations ended. As for Sunlight Dust, he did not particularly mind. Although he and Three Knives were both red names, they were not companions, and he had no obligation to rescue Three Knives. Big Sis Fire, what are we going to do now? Flying Shadow asked worriedly as he sheathed his daggers. Every player's heart was familiar with the terror of the Flower of Seven Sins. Until today, they had never once failed a job. Even superguilds did not dare to provoke the Flower of Seven Sins. Such an organization targeted Zero Wing. Even with Zero Wing's current strength, Flying Shadow doubted that they could fend off the Flower of Seven Sins. This matter is of utmost importance. Let's discuss it with Aqua and guild leader first. Fire Dance had no idea of what to do now. The Flower of Seven Sins' reputation was simply too immense. Anyone who had touched a virtual reality game knew about the organization. The Flower of Seven Sins was a transcendental existence among gamers. If the Flower of Seven Sins truly intended to annihilate Zero Wing, then this would be the greatest danger their guild had ever faced. The top of the world, Mount Sogar. With the aid of 2 Tier 3 demons, Feng finally managed to locate a pair of massive locked doors near the top of Mount Sogar. Engraved runes decorated the stone doors and black chains bound them, each chain giving off a faint pressure. This pressure was familiar to Feng. Divine Might. Although the divine might the chains exuded was faint, no one who had encountered divine might would forget the sensation. Feng had already reached level 34. His level was high enough for him to rank within the top 3 of Star Moon Kingdom's ranking list. On Mount Sogar, however, he was an insignificant existence. If he had not possessed 2 Tier 3 demons, he would not have made it up to this point. Feng had encountered multiple level 50 lords on his way up the mountain. With his strength alone, unless he activated the Aura of Space's space movement, he would not have survived. Meanwhile, a gigantic beast stood guard beside the massive pair of stone doors. This quest is absurdly difficult on so many levels. Feng inwardly laughed bitterly as he watched the gigantic beast. 9-headed magic snake, ferocious beast, great lord. Level 55. HP 90, 000, 000/90, 000, 000. Chapter 696. Ferocious Beast. Ferocious beasts were different from general wild and demonic beasts. They belonged to the ancient era. During ancient times, ferocious beasts were monsters that fought even gods. Some ferocious beasts had even managed to kill gods. Ferocious beasts were on the same level as angels and dragons, possessing the strength to challenge opponents of a higher tier. In the past, Feng had watched large guilds raid ferocious beasts, and he could describe those battles with a single word: intense. Once, an army of 10,000 elite players and several hundred first-rate and top-tier experts had attempted to raid a ferocious beast. The players had all been above level 100, whereas the ferocious beast had only been level 90. Some of those players had even been Tier 3 classes. In the end, although the players defeated the ferocious beast, over 95% of the elites and half of the experts had died. There was a massive difference in strength between players at level 90 and players at level 100. It was like the difference between level 40 and level 50. Equipment's attributes would undergo a massive improvement at the level 100 threshold. Monsters received a similar boost. Yet, even with such a huge difference, the players who faced off against the ferocious beast still suffered devastating losses. Although the 9-headed magic snake was only a great lord, unlike the level 90 ferocious beast that had been a level 90 grand lord, it was still a much higher level than Feng. At the very minimum, it would take a party of level 60 players to take down a level 55 Great Lord ranked ferocious beast. In Feng's opinion, if he wanted to kill this ferocious beast, he needed at least 500 level 60 and above tier 2 players. Moreover, they would need excellent equipment. Particularly, their weapons should be at least dark gold rank. Facing the 9-headed magic snake with any less would be suicide. Unlike other monsters, ferocious beasts did not just possess immense combat power. They also possessed the life force passed down from ancient times. In combat, ordinary monsters' battle recovery would only regenerate 1% of their HPs every 5 seconds. Ferocious beasts' battle recovery, on the other hand, regenerated 3% of their HPs every 5 seconds. A ferocious beast's HP already ranked at the very top among monsters. They were practically bug-like existences. The 9-headed magic snake had 90 million HP. In battle, it could recover 2,700,000 HP every 5 seconds. Even if Feng multiplied his damage output by 10, and the Great Lord stood motionless, he could not kill it. With such a powerful monster guarding the doors, It had been made clear that underestimating this quest's difficulty would be a mistake. Even an epic quest wasn't this absurdly difficult. Fortunately, it doesn't seem like I'm required to kill the 9-headed magic snake to pass through those doors. Feng breathed a sigh of relief as he shifted his gaze towards a small circular indentation in the stone doors. The indentation was the perfect size for the elemental core. Weissman had said that the elemental core was both a map and a key. Since there was a keyhole in the stone doors, he just needed to insert the elemental core to open them. Moreover, with the 9-headed magic snake's massive body, it would not be able to cross the threshold. As long as Feng reached the other side of the doors, he should be safe from the ferocious beast. However, trying to open the doors under the snake's nose was not going to be easy. It seems like I'll have to sacrifice the purgatory demon. Feng noticed that the purgatory demon's time in this world was already nearing its end. Since it was going to disappear soon anyway, he might as well put it to good use. The purgatory demon had 13 million HP. It should buy him some time. Immediately, Feng used Phantom Kill and sent his doppelganger away. With this, should his life be in danger, he could escape. As the doppelganger distanced itself from Feng's group, the swordsman directed the purgatory demon to charge towards the 9-headed magic snake. Next to the 9-headed magic snake, which was over 30 meters tall, the purgatory demon looked like an insect. One bite from one of the Great Lord would be enough to devour several purgatory demons. When the purgatory demon was 30 yards away from the 9-headed magic snake, the latter yawned lazily as it whipped its tail forward. Suddenly, the hill-like snake tail appeared before the purgatory demon. Before Feng could react, the snake sent his purgatory demon hurtling into a nearby stone wall. When the purgatory demon slammed into the wall, a damage that the demon had never experienced before appeared above its head. Minus 267,849. Feng's mouth twitched when he saw those numbers. This damage far surpassed his expectations. With a casual strike, the 9-headed magic snake dealt nearly minus 270,000 damage. Despite both creatures being tier 3, the difference in strength was like heaven and earth. Since I can't approach it, what about this? Feng did not dare direct the purgatory demon to approach the ferocious beast again. Instead, he used the tier 3 skill, Garuda's Flames. Suddenly, a sea of fire rushed towards the 9-headed magic snake. This time, the ferocious beast finally woke. Suddenly, one of its snake heads opened its mouth and inhaled. The beast sucked the flaming tide into its mouth, devouring the fire in the blink of an eye. Even Feng was stunned. This was his first battle against a ferocious beast. Although he had known that the purgatory demon was no match for the 9-headed magic snake, he had not expected the ferocious beast to fend off the purgatory demon's attack with little to no effort. The difference between them was absurd. After devouring the sea of fire, that snakehead turned to stare at the purgatory demon. In the next moment, it widened its mouth and spat out a more powerful version of Garuda's Flames. The flames were extremely fast, and it took everything Feng had just to get the purgatory demon to dodge those flames. As for the sturdy stone walls that bore the brunt of the molten attack, not only did the flames effortlessly tear through the walls, but the stone also melted into glowing lava. In an instant, over 50 meters of the stone wall disappeared. Is this the strength of the 9-headed magic snake? Feng was utterly baffled. At this point, he even began to doubt whether the 9-headed magic snake was just a great lord. Even several thousand tier 2 players would not be a match for the ferocious beast. Moreover, based on the magic snake's lazy attitude, it was obvious that the ferocious beast was simply toying with him. It had yet to utilize its true potential. Helpless, Feng could only use his final trump card. The purgatory demon's tier 3 taboo skill, Spatial Suppression. If he could not shift the 9-headed magic snake's attention towards the purgatory demon, he would not have a chance to open the stone doors. The power of a tier 3 taboo skill could rival even an ordinary tier 4 skill. As the 9-headed magic snake was both a great lord and a ferocious beast, its combat power should be equivalent to tier 4. In theory, a tier 3 taboo skill should deal damage to the 9-headed magic snake. Moreover, the damage should be relatively high. When the purgatory demon swung its war axe at the 9-headed magic snake, Feng silently prayed that the attack would wound the great lord. Even a small amount of damage would be fine. This time, the nine-headed magic snake finally raised all 9 of its heads. Its eyes locked onto the Purgatory Demon's incoming war axe. Suddenly, a hint of gravity appeared in its amber eyes. Let this succeed. Feng tightened his grip around the elemental core, focused on the nine-headed magic snake's reaction. When spatial suppression activated, everything the space surrounding the nine-headed magic snake suddenly grew incomparably heavy. One could not move if they tried. Yet, the nine-headed magic snake still moved. Although it was extremely slow, it was still capable of moving under the spatial suppression. However, as its tail moved very slowly, Feng could easily control the Purgatory Demon to avoid the attack. The demon's war axe then struck one of the fierce beast's heads. Boom! The nine-headed magic snake instantly lost that head as it fell to the ground, forming a massive crater. Meanwhile, the other 8 heads simultaneously screamed in pain as a massive amount of damage appeared above them. Minus 605,791. Chapter 697. Super Large-Scale Destruction Spell. After suddenly losing one of its heads, the magic snake's 8 remaining heads glared at the Purgatory Demon, rage filling their amber eyes. Less than a second later, however, the dismembered head grew back. All 9 of the Great Lord's heads then abruptly opened their mouths and spat out a gray beam. Despite receiving a Tier 3 Taboo skill, the nine-headed magic snake's combat power had not decreased in the slightest. Not daring to be careless, Feng hurriedly directed the Purgatory Demon to evade the beams and distance itself from the ferocious beast. Anything the snake's beams touched turned into gray stone. However, as the beast had fired 9 gray beams, due to Feng's lack of control over the Purgatory Demon, he accidentally allowed one of the beams to strike on the demon. Instantly, the Purgatory Demon lost over 500,000 HP. Moreover, it was also afflicted with the petrified state, stealing more than 200,000 HP every 2 seconds and 60% of its movement speed for 30 seconds. Isn't this petrification skill a little too strong? Feng used the Aura of Water skill, Life Bloom, on the Purgatory Demon the moment he saw the debuff's description. While petrified, not only would the Purgatory Demon lose massive amounts of HP, but the nine-headed magic snake could also easily catch up to it due to the movement speed reduction. If that happened, the Purgatory Demon would be a goner in less than 30 seconds. With Life Bloom, however, the Purgatory Demon's HP recovered at an impressive rate. Life Bloom recovered 60% of its target's HP every second. With the Purgatory Demon's 13 million HP, even if the nine-headed magic snake were more powerful, it would not instantly kill the demon. Hence, for the next 40 seconds, the Purgatory Demon was nearly invulnerable. Immediately, Feng used the Purgatory Demon to lure the nine-headed magic snake away from the massive stone doors. Once the ferocious beast was 40 yards away, and Feng was sure that it focused on the Purgatory Demon fully, Feng activated Windwalk and dashed towards the stone doors. Time ticked by, second after second. As Feng approached the massive stone doors, his heart rate rose rapidly. If the nine-headed magic snake discovered him now, he would die without a doubt. Even if he relied on the temporarily immortal Purgatory Demon, he could not stop the ferocious beast from grinding him to a pulp. By the time Feng arrived at the stone doors, over 6 seconds had passed. Meanwhile, the Purgatory Demon had lured the nine-headed magic snake 100 yards away from the stone doors and desperately tried to pin it down, earning as much time for Feng as possible. To the nine-headed magic snake, the Purgatory Demon was practically a toy. Again and again, the ferocious beast smashed the Purgatory Demon into the ground, damages in the hundreds of thousands appearing above the demon's head. The Purgatory Demon had no power to resist. Without wasting any time, Feng immediately inserted the elemental core into the small hole in the doors. Suddenly, the magic arrays on the elemental core and inside the circular hole shifted and aligned. They then released a faint, golden light. The runes covering the pair of stone doors lit up, releasing a dazzling golden glow. A moment later, the chains around the stone doors began to shatter. Faster! Hurry up! Feng's anxiety mounted as he watched the chains break, one after another. There were over 20 chains around the doors, yet each one took a full second to break. It would take more than 20 seconds for the stone doors to open. As the chains shattered, the initially weak divine might grew stronger. This is bad. Feng frowned as he turned to the nine-headed magic snake, which currently toyed with the purgatory demon. With the divine might growing stronger, even he could sense it clearly now, not to mention the ferocious beast that had guarded the doors all this time. Sure enough, the nine-headed magic snake sensed the increasing divine might, and it could not help but turn to look at the stone doors. Suddenly, it whipped its tail and sent the purgatory demon flying before turning and slithered toward Feng. Meanwhile, 10 chains remained on the doors. With the nine-headed magic snake's speed, it did not need that much time to reach him. With no other choice, Feng directed the cursed demon to use the Tier 3 skill, Spiritual Blade, to attack the ferocious beast. Spiritual Blade was not just a magical attack skill. It was also capable of forcing its target into a confused state for 15 seconds. The skill could earn him enough time for the doors to open. This time, due to the stone doors being unlocked, the nine-headed magic snake did not bother blocking the spiritual blade. Immediately, the ferocious beast received over -300,000 damage, releasing a pained cry as its massive body slid to a halt. Its eyes glazed over slightly. Good. Feng unconsciously sighed with relief. Although the nine-headed magic snake possessed relatively high magic resistance, in the end, it was still only a great lord. A Tier 3 skill should still be effective against it. As the chains continued to shatter, the ferocious beast's glazed eyes gradually regained clarity. By the time the last 3 chains remained, the nine-headed magic snake woke from its stupor. It then released an earth-shaking roar, its cold, amber eyes suddenly turning blood-red. Widening its mouths, it fired multiple gray beams once more. The nine-headed magic snake had spat a total of 9 gray beams. Each one was more than enough to kill Feng instantly. Moreover, the 9 beams sealed off any path of retreat. Feng had nowhere to go. Immediately, Feng activated his replace skill. In the next moment, Feng's doppelganger lost all of its HP as it transformed into a gray statue. Following which, the doppelganger shattered, becoming dust that scattered in the wind. It could not resist the beams in the slightest. Seeing Feng vanish completely, the nine-headed magic snake shifted its attention towards the cursed demon. Feng immediately directed the cursed demon to escape. To the nine-headed magic snake, however, the cursed demon was simply too slow. After the demon had taken a few steps, the ferocious beast caught up to it. With a whip of its tail, the nine-headed magic snake sent the cursed demon into a stone wall, destroying over 400,000 HP instantly. In less than 3 seconds, the cursed demon lost over 2 million HP. This is my chance. Feng realized that all of the chains had finally broken. He activated space movement and arrived before the doors once more. Stretching out his hand, he twisted the elemental core. As the elemental core produced a click sound, the massive stone doors gradually opened. Turning to take a look, the nine-headed magic snake froze. It had never imagined that Feng would appear again. Thinking that its previous skill had been too weak, all 9 of the Great Lord's heads stretched open their jaws once more. This time, however, the heads did not spit gray beams. Suddenly, a massive 3-fold magic array appeared above the stone doors. The sky suddenly darkened as black winds moaned. The massive magic array covered a radius of 300 yards, and even the distant purgatory demon and curse demon were within the ferocious beast's attack range. Feng's excited expression dropped. Feng had seen this spell before. The Tier 3 curse, Dark Gale. The curse was a super large-scale destruction spell that lasted 10 full seconds. At this moment, Feng had no defense against this spell. The 7 Luminaries ring was still on cooldown, so he could not switch to the Aura of Earth or the Aura of Illusion. As for Defensive Blade, the skill's block counts were not enough to block the Dark Gale completely. As the Black Gale tore at him, Feng said his prayers as he activated Defensive Blade. The wind devoured all life it touched. In the blink of an eye, the Defensive Blade's 9 block counts had been exhausted. Dark Gale had caused 9 instances of damage in just 1 second. Even with his Tier 1 Defensive Blade, Feng would not last 2 seconds. Meanwhile, the Purgatory Demon and Curse Demon each lost nearly 500,000 HP every second. The 9-headed magic snake's damage was terrifying. What a pity! As the black wind surrounded him, Feng felt somewhat disappointed. He was a thread away from opening and entering the stone doors. He had never imagined that the nine-headed magic snake would be so vicious to use a Tier 3 curse. Moreover, it was a super large-scale destruction spell. The ferocious beast gave him no chance, as the black wind swept in for a second attack. Suddenly, the threefold magic array in the sky began to disappear. The dark gale also dissipated into nothingness. Before Feng could figure out what was happening, the nine-headed magic snake cried painfully as its body rapidly turned into stone. It then shattered into dust and rubble. 3 shimmering items fell on top of the pile of rubble. The sound of a system notification suddenly reached Feng's ears. This is Chapter 698. Strengthening Device. By now, Feng was quite familiar with the nine-headed magic snake's strength. To current players, it was practically invincible. It didn't matter how many players came here to raid it. Meanwhile, in Feng's mind, he had never actually thought of killing the nine-headed magic beast. Since the beginning, he had only thought of luring it away from the stone doors. He had never expected the Great Lord to die. For a time, Feng was speechless. However, when he heard the sound of the system notification, he more or less understood what had happened. System. Blood refining passage has been opened. Do you wish to enter? Time remaining, 1 hour 59 minutes. So it turns out that, as this place's guardian beast, if the stone doors open, the guardian dies. It's no wonder why the nine-headed magic snake was so desperate. Feng inwardly celebrated as he stared at the rubble that used to be the nine-headed magic snake. Unfortunately, he had not killed the snake. Otherwise, with the EXP from the ferocious beast, he might have risen several levels. With the stone doors open and quite some time before they closed again, Feng did not hurry into the blood-refining passage. Instead, he approached the nine-headed magic snake's remains, hoping to take a closer look at what items the ferocious beast had dropped. Although he was not responsible for the nine-headed magic snake's death, as a monster, it would still drop some items after dying. Only, it would drop significantly fewer items. The nine-headed magic snake had been a great lord-ranked ferocious beast. Even the most inferior item it would drop was not something one would find from an ordinary great lord. Among the 3 items, one was a magical pure black cube covered with blood-red runes. The item was called Blood Refining Stone, and it could be used inside the blood refining world. As for the other 2 items, one was a silver Feng-like dagger, while the other was a drawing. Sure enough, a ferocious beast's loot is amazing. It even dropped an epic dagger. Feng was momentarily stunned. Petrified Thorn, Dagger, Epic Rank. Level 40. Level 100. Equipment Requirement. Strength 550. Agility 400. Attributes adjust according to user's level. Attack power plus 1165, currently level 40. Strength plus 92. Agility plus 101. Endurance plus 60. Strength increased by 10%. Agility increased by 10%. Attack speed plus 12. Evasion plus 20. All skills plus 2 levels. Ignore levels plus 20. Ignore 20% of the target's defense. Damage from sneak attacks increase by 20%. Level requirement to equip all items decreased by 5 levels. Durability 300/300. Attacks have 30% chance to inflict petrified effect, reducing target's weapon damage by 10% each second and movement speed by 60% for 6 seconds. 30% chance to trigger fatal blow effect, increasing damage by 220%. Additional skill 1 dash. Devour Magic. Absorbs magic damage equal to 300% of user's maximum HP for 15 seconds. Damage absorbed can be converted into a single attack, dealing twice the amount of damage absorbed to an area of 5 by 50 yards in front of user. Cooldown. 10 minutes. Additional skill 2 dash. Petrification Domain. Enemies within 50 yards receive 500% weapon damage and have their movement speed reduced by 50% for 10 seconds. Increases the user's agility, strength, and movement speed with each target hit. Agility and strength can increase to a maximum of 30%, while movement speed can increase to a maximum of 100% for 30 seconds. Cooldown. 1 hour. Fire Dance really lucked out this time. She'll be able to equip this once she reaches level 40. Only, the dagger's strength requirement is somewhat high. I'll have to figure out a way to increase her strength. Feng happily stored away the petrified thorn. Although the true fire blades Fire Dance wielded were top-tier dark gold weapons, they were on a completely different level compared to the petrified thorn. At the end of the day, even the most powerful dark gold weapon was only a mortal's weapon. An epic weapon, on the other hand, was a true extraordinary weapon. The petrified thorn's attack power was especially frightening. The dagger's 1165 attack power was even higher than a level 40 dark gold ranked two-handed weapon. Not to mention, there were the strength and agility increases the dagger provided. If Fire Dance equipped this dagger, she could slice through players as if she were dicing vegetables. Following which, Feng's gaze shifted towards the tattered drawing. Strengthening device forging design. Can strengthen player equipment, significantly reducing the consumption of durability. Required materials: 1 magic crystal, 10 mithril ore, 2 intermediate mana recovery potions, and 1 basic alchemy array. Is this real? Even something like this dropped? Feng muttered in surprise. In God's domain, monsters would grow more powerful as they reached higher levels. Take the monsters players currently face for example. Not only did they possess very high attack power, but they could also significantly reduce equipment durability. It was why the various guilds were forced to repair their equipment in Stone Forest Town. Players could repair weapons with whetstones and advanced whetstones. However, there were no such recovery items for equipment. However, there were items that could reinforce equipment. The strengthening device was one such item. Only, its forging design was extremely hard to obtain. It only dropped from level 50 and above Great Lord ranked field bosses. Dungeons would not drop the design. Moreover, the strengthening device was a consumable item. It could not be permanently equipped. Fortunately, the forging process was very simple, and the item also had relatively high durability. Players could put it to good use for a relatively long period. If they dodged attacks properly, they could extend the strengthening device's lifespan even further. However, one of the raw materials required was not that easy to obtain. While mithril or intermediate mana recovery potions and basic alchemy arrays were both cheap and easily available, it was a different story for magic crystals. Magic crystals were always rare and valuable. Hence, crafting strengthening devices was expensive. Each one would cost roughly 30 silver to produce. Even so, there were still a large number of players willing to purchase it. While ordinary players were willing to waste some time traveling back to towns and cities to repair their equipment, large guilds were not as willing. To them, time was money. In the past, a strengthening device's standard price was 2 gold. During its peak, however, the price soared to 4 gold due to high demand and low supply. Currently, the various large guilds of Star Moon Kingdom and several neighboring kingdoms had sent many of their members to the Stone Claw Mountains. Obviously, the strengthening devices could offer some convenience. Just the amount of time and repair fees the strengthening devices could save them were worth more than 4 gold. It seems I'll have to find some opportunity to grind level 50 field Great Lords. With one strengthening device forging design, I won't even be able to produce enough for the guild members. Feng suddenly thought of a profitable business idea. If he waited too long, the strengthening devices would not be as profitable. Just as Feng finished organizing his items and was about to enter the blood refining passage, he suddenly discovered over 100 unread messages in his inbox. Among them, over 90% were from Aqua Rose. There were also messages from Gentle Snow and Fire Dance. They had all sent these messages around the same time. After he had reached Mount Sogar's core, he had worried that he would get himself killed while receiving a message. Hence, he had blocked all calls and messages for the time being. What happened? Why are they so anxious? Feng wondered as he opened the messages. Chapter 699. Banished. The Flower of 7 Sins. A serious expression overcame Feng when he saw this name. He had not expected that exemplary Willow to be so vicious. It would have been fine had she just hired a bunch of red names and small workshops to harass Zero Wing. At most, it would make things a little difficult for the guild. However, It was a completely different story if she hired the Flower of Seven Sins. As a mysterious assassin organization of the virtual gaming world, nearly every virtual reality game contained traces of the Flower of Seven Sins. In the past, the Flower of Seven Sins had even developed itself into one of God's domain's peak powers. No guild could afford to offend the Flower of Seven Sins. As long as one could afford the organization's price, these assassins could even take out a super guild's guild leader. Everyone was afraid of them. In the past, 5 super guilds had banded together to suppress the Flower of Seven Sins, threatening to retaliate if the organization accepted any assassination requests on their respective guilds' upper echelons. Unfortunately, those super guilds' efforts had been futile. In less than 10 days, all 5 super guilds gave up on suppressing the assassin organization. The Flower of Seven Sins had made a statement by killing their upper echelons once. There were even god-ranked experts among those who had died. From then on, the various super guilds in God's domain no longer bothered with the Flower of Seven Sins. Back then, the incident had shaken God's domain. The Flower of Seven Sins had become a power that no one would dare provoke. However, the organization's asking price was also extraordinarily high. Even open-source corporations should feel a sting from the cost of hiring the organization. Exemplary Willow must have hired the Flower of Seven Sins to deal with Zero Wing's upper echelons. Even OSC can't afford to target the entire guild. Feng gave the situation some thought. The best method to deal with Zero Wing was to kill the guild's upper echelons to level 0. This would certainly collapse both Zero Wing's strength and reputation. As for the possibility of the Flower of Seven Sins failing to carry out their contract, since its creation, the Flower of Seven Sins had never once failed a job. Their strength was practically endless. Even Feng was not confident of surviving an assassination attempt from the Flower of Seven Sins right now, not to mention the guild's other members. If I remember correctly, before the Flower of Seven Sins takes action, the organization usually invests some time to investigate their target before taking action. In the past, the Flower of Seven Sins would take anywhere from 5 to 10 days to collect information. If Exemplary Willow went directly to them and hired the organization after she returned from our meeting, I should still have roughly 4 days before the organization takes action. If their target is much stronger than their initial estimations, the Flower of Seven Sins will adjust their quote to their employer and will only take action after their employer agrees to the new price. Right now, the best way to avoid this mess is to increase the strength of the guild's upper echelon significantly within 4 days, forcing the Flower of Seven Sins to renew their price. If that happened, Exemplary Willow might not consider the price worth it and give up on the organization altogether. Feng had some understanding of the Flower of Seven Sins rules and pricing. Killing a system-recognized, third-rate expert cost 500,000 credits. The price increased depending on the expert's strength. Moreover, this was only the price for one death. As for system-recognized, second-rate experts, the minimum asking price was 3 million credits. The minimum price for first-rate experts was 10 million credits. Top-tier experts cost 100 million credits at the very minimum. Above them would be apex experts, and the organization charged upwards of 500 million credits for each kill. Ordinary people could never afford the Flower of Seven Sins. Only those large guilds and corporations with significant financial strength could do so. However, rather than spend so much money to kill an opponent, it was more cost-effective to send their own men to get the job done. Hence, only when one had no other options would they employ the Flower of Seven Sins. This was precisely the case for Exemplary Willow right now. At this point, even the Star Alliance was helpless against Zero Wing in the Star Moon Kingdom, not to mention Twilight Echo, which did not have the home ground advantage. The cost of killing Zero Wing's upper echelons to level 0 was astronomical. Only a massive existence like the Open Source Corporation could afford such a price. Currently, the Flower of Seven Sins had yet to determine the strength of Zero Wing's upper echelons. Based on Feng's estimates, killing a 5th-floor expert of the Trial Tower should cost at least 500,000 credits. A 6th-floor expert would cost at least 3 million credits. A 7th-floor expert would cost around 10 million credits, and an 8th-floor expert should cost at least 100 million credits. Currently, Zero Wing upper management consisted of more than 20 players, and the majority were 6th-floor experts. Only Fire Dance and Violet Cloud had reached the 7th floor. If everyone could improve their strength, the cost of killing them would increase exponentially. At that time, even OSC would have to reconsider. Following which, Feng contacted Aqua Rose, instructing her to turn the guild's upper echelons' focus on improving their strength and progressing through the trial tower as much as possible. Feng would also go all out to supply everyone with the 100-berry wine. Although Aqua Rose did not understand Feng's intentions, since he had given the order, she had no choice but to do as he wished. For a time, Zero Wing's upper echelons ceased grinding monsters in the Stone Claw Mountains. Instead, they focused on their progression in the trial tower. As for Gentle Snow's message, she wanted to inform Feng of OSC's investment into the Star Alliance, becoming one of the guild's major shareholders. She also stated that OSC intended to deal with Zero Wing, so he should be wary of the Star Alliance. Naturally, Feng had already taken appropriate measures to protect Zero Wing. Hence, not long after Feng read Gentle Snow's message, shocking news spread throughout Star Moon City. Stone Forest Town was no longer open to the Star Alliance. Any guild that was affiliated with the Star Alliance was also barred from Stone Forest Town. This incident instantly attracted the attention of every player in the capital city. Everyone was confused as to why Zero Wing would suddenly declare war against the Star Alliance. The Stone Claw Mountains had long since become an iconic symbol of Star Moon City. Meanwhile, Stone Forest Town was an indispensable resting place for players grinding in the Stone Claw Mountains. Without this resting place, the Star Alliance would fall far behind the other guilds. Of course, the Star Alliance could seek the aid of others to help them repair their equipment in Stone Forest Town. However, Feng had prepared for that as well. Feng had limited the amount of equipment players could repair. In other words, in addition to one's own equipment, players visiting Stone Forest Town could only help one other player repair a set of equipment once. Moreover, he also placed a limit on the players' levels. Only players who were level 30 or above were allowed to repair their equipment in the town. With this, he restricted the Star Alliance's options of repairing equipment in Stone Forest Town. Can someone tell me what is going on here? When Galaxy Past received this information, he nearly jumped out of his seat from anger. The situation had changed so suddenly that even Galaxy Past did not understand what had happened. Why had Zero Wing turned against them? The Star Alliance had only considered striking out against Zero Wing. The guild had yet to take such considerations seriously. Yet, Zero Wing chose to humiliate the Star Alliance publicly. The Star Alliance had already mobilized the majority of its combat power to the Stone Claw Mountains. If the Star Alliance's members could not rest in Stone Forest Town, how was the guild supposed to compete with the other guilds? Silence-filled conference hall. This was the first time anyone had seen Galaxy Past so furious. Guild leader, maybe Zero Wing made this move because they think that we are becoming too big of a threat? Purple Eye was also confused by Zero Wing's drastic actions. They had clearly minded their own business until just recently. Zero Wing must have found out about OSC's investment into the Star Alliance, Red Feather reasoned. Even if we have OSC's support, there is no reason for this. Zero Wing has clearly made us out to be their greatest enemy, Purple Eye said as she shook her head. Go. Contact Black Flame immediately. Galaxy Past agreed with Purple Eye's opinion. He needed to sort out this matter with Black Flame properly. Chapter 700. Improving Swordsmanship. After Feng finished dealing with Zero Wing, he entered the blood refining passage. Regarding the Flower of Seven Sins, he could only focus on growing stronger. He had already obtained an epic weapon, and he was nowhere near completing the Solomon's Treasure quest. If he completed the quest, he might be able to upgrade his equipment. If he could obtain an epic weapon for himself, his combat power would rise significantly. Is this the blood refining passage? Feng found his surroundings somewhat stifling. The blood refining passage was a long and narrow passageway. Feng could not even see the passage's end. Numerous blood-red runes had been carved into the walls on either side, radiating a faint divine might that made him very uncomfortable. It felt as if he were submerged in water. Even walking down the passageway was difficult. If he had to fight in such an environment, he wouldn't be able to exert even half of his normal strength. The moment Feng entered the passageway, the large stone doors had closed, preventing any retreat. Right now, his only option to escape was to give up on the quest and use a return scroll. Since his path of retreat had been closed off, Feng could only advance down the walkway. However, before Feng had covered a distance of 100 yards, two monsters suddenly emerged from the walls on either side of the passage. These two monsters wore blood-red armor and wielded silvery white bone spears. Blood Fighter, Undead, Elite Rank. Level 50. HP 100, 000/100, 000. Undead. Feng unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief as he looked at the two 3-meter-tall blood warriors. Luckily, they're just level 50 elites. With the divine might suppression, the strength he could exert was limited. If a chieftain had appeared, he would have had no choice but to summon a tier 3 demon. However, the magic amplification scroll had limited uses. Feng did not want to waste them. After the two blood fighters appeared, they immediately charged at Feng while thrusting their spears, each spear splitting into 3. They fought like experts who had known the same weapon for many years. All 6 spears aimed for Feng's vital points. With the two blood fighters working together, even Feng could not avoid all of their attacks. Such skill. Feng was slightly surprised. The blood fighter's spearmanship was on par with experts who specialized with the spear. In a fight without skills, even elite players would stand no chance against these blood fighters. Feng retreated, dodging the oncoming attacks as much as possible. From time to time, he used his swords to block an attack. The passage was somewhat narrow, and the two blood fighters took up the entire path. He had no room to circle to their sides. He could only face them head-on. Die! After Feng tested bloodfighter skills, he took half a step back and raised the abyssal blade, intending to use Thundering Flash to end this battle quickly. In the next moment, the abyssal blade transformed into a streak of black light as it descended. However, the usual blue electric arcs did not appear. The two blood fighters did not receive any damage whatsoever. On the contrary, one of them thrust its spear at Feng's head fiercely. Hurriedly, Feng repelled the oncoming spear with Purgatory's shadow in his other hand, deftly evading the silver spear. I can't use skills? Feng felt his head begin to ache. Skills were a player's advantage against monsters. If a player could not use any of their skills, then more than half of their advantage over monsters would be gone. However, Feng was not a greenhorn. During God's Domain's initial stages, players normally relied on skills in a battle. However, battles between experts were usually fought without any skills. Instead, they relied on their techniques against each other. The two blood fighters were indeed powerful. However, their attack patterns were overly monotonous and lacked flexibility. To a sword expert like Feng, a few exchanges were all he needed to find a gap to damage the two elites. When the abyssal blade slashed at a gap in one of the blood fighter's crimson armor, that blood fighter immediately retreated by a step, a crack appearing on the white bone beneath the armor. A damage of -1056 points then appeared above the blood fighter's head. Such a powerful defense and mana body. Feng had a very clear understanding of how high his attack power was. Not to mention, the abyssal blade even bore a magic device that increased its destructive power drastically. Against a level 50 elite monster, he should be able to deal at least -1500 damage. His strike should also affect his target's combat power to some extent, not to mention an attack that had struck a vital point. Yet, he had only dealt slightly over -1000 damage after striking the blood fighter's bone. Moreover, only a small crack had appeared on said bone. The blood fighter's defense could already rival that of a chieftain-ranked monster. However, after repelling one blood fighter, the space available to him increased significantly. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Feng quickly dashed to the other blood fighter's side, stabbing Purgatory's shadow into the blood fighter's arm joint and forcing the elite's attack to a stop. Immediately after, the abyssal blade struck one of the blood fighter's vital points. One hit at the joints and one hit at a vital point. Feng repeated this combination attack, preventing the blood fighter from retaliating as its HP rapidly decreased. Even though the blood fighter had 100,000 HP, the damage would slowly accumulate if Feng continued dealing -1000 or so damage with his attacks. In less than 5 minutes, both blood fighters fell to the ground, becoming no more than a pile of bones and armor while dropping a piece of level 50 common equipment and a few dozen copper coins. They had also provided Feng with an ample amount of EXP. In the next moment, The red mist that the blood fighters released upon death suddenly flowed into Feng's body. System: Blood Refining Stone has obtained 1 point of blood energy. System: Blood Refining Stone has obtained 1 point of blood energy. This is, Feng took out the Blood Refining Stone, which he had obtained from the 9-headed magic snake. The pitch-black stone gave off a faint, red glow. Its information had also changed. Blood Refining Stone can evolve into a blood refining crystal after absorbing 1,000 points of blood energy. 2/1000. Although Feng did not know what use there was to upgrading the blood refining stone into a blood refining crystal, after giving it some thought, he realized that it might be a crucial key to completing his quest. Moreover, the blood fighters had provided an ample amount of EXP. It was roughly 3 times that of an ordinary level 50 elite. Hence, this wasn't a bad place to level up. Following which, Feng continued along the passageway. He would encounter blood fighters every so often. However, as he progressed down the passage, more blood fighters appeared with each ambush. From the initial 2, the number gradually increased to 3, then 4. However, this was still not the greatest change. As the number of blood fighters increased, their attacks became more accurate. By the time Feng faced 4 blood fighters at the same time, their spearmanship had also become far more flexible. Their attack patterns began to vary as well. Killing the blood fighters became more of a challenge, and the time it took for him to end each battle increased significantly. After 3 to 4 hours of intense, non-stop combat, even an elite player would feel mentally exhausted. Fortunately, Feng had long since adapted to God's domain's battles. Rather than feeling tired, he felt elated when fighting these blood fighters. It was not very often that he could fight in a life-or-death battle purely involving techniques. Without being able to use his skills, Feng gradually noticed the deficiencies in his own swordsmanship. While he possessed plenty of attack methods, he lacked methods to defend himself with his swords, and he would often make up for this gap by relying on movement. Hence, Feng began to use his swordsmanship for both attacking and defending, no longer relying on his agility to evade oncoming attacks. As Feng engaged in more battles, his defensive swordsmanship improved. Initially, he still had to evade attacks every so often against 2 blood fighters simultaneously. After a few hours, however, Feng no longer needed to evade the attacks. He could fend off all of the attacks with his 2 swords. Ha! Another change has occurred? Just as Feng prepared to deal with the next batch of blood fighters, the elites stopped appearing. Instead, a skeleton wielding a 2-handed saber and wearing exquisite armor pulled away from one of the walls. Life filled the skeleton's flashing, red eyes. It was completely different from the robotic blood fighters. Chapter 701. Blood Warrior. Hua! Hua! The skeleton in black spiked armor suddenly brandished its 2-handed saber, creating a powerful gale that engulfed Feng. Its blade work is so fast. I didn't see the weapon move at all. Feng unconsciously tightened his grip on the abyssal blade. He felt an immense pressure as he stared at the flashing red flames in the skeleton's eye sockets. Blood Warrior, Undead, Special Elite. Level 50. HP 240, 000/240, 000. Although the Blood Warrior's HP was not high, its attack speed and strength were on a whole different level compared to the blood fighters. Suddenly, the Blood Warrior stomped its foot. Feng only heard the sound of a sonic boom before the Blood Warrior appeared right in front of him, its massive saber transforming into a streak of silver light as it descended towards his head. In terms of strength and speed, the Blood Warrior was simply overwhelming. Although Feng had stretched his perception to its very limit, the Blood Warrior's explosive power still caught him unprepared. Boom! When the Blood Warrior swung its saber, the saber light extended over 10 yards. If the walkway had not been indestructible, the undead's attack would have gouged the ground. Meanwhile, the attack had sent Feng flying over 20 yards, a damage of more than -1,000 points appearing above his head. In the blink of an eye, Feng lost 1/10 of his HP. So powerful! Feng gaped at the Blood Warrior with a face. His entire arm was numb. It was not surprising that the special elite was stronger and faster than he was. What was surprising was the fact that the Blood Warrior had an expert's techniques as well. Neither its movement nor attacks contained any excess movement whatsoever. This allowed the undead to exert astonishing speed and destructive power. Even Feng had only barely blocked the attack with his sword. Suddenly, Feng was no longer as complacent as he had been against the blood fighters. Players had two main advantages against monsters. The first was their skills, while the second was combat techniques. However, inside the blood refining passage, players could not use any of their skills and could only rely on their combat techniques in a fight. As for the Blood Warrior before Feng, not only did it possess superior attributes, but its techniques surpassed even ordinary expert players. If an ordinary expert stood in Feng's place right now, they would have no strength to resist the Blood Warrior. Just as Feng pondered ways to deal with the Blood Warrior, the latter charged for Feng once more, giving him no time to catch his breath. The Blood Warrior slashed its two-handed saber at Feng in quick succession, every one of its attacks faster than Feng's visual perception. Feng could only rely on his intuition to block or dodge the attacks. He did not even have time to breathe. 1 slash, 2 slashes, 3 slashes. Countless saber lights intertwined, generating dazzling sparks as they collided with Feng's swords. Each time Feng blocked the Blood Warrior's saber, he was sent flying. Even while Feng soared through the air, the Blood Warrior showed no signs of stopping its assault. As long as Feng erred in his judgment, he would be executed on the spot. Feng was thrown over 100 yards in quick succession, his body slamming into the ground. The difference between their strengths was obvious at first glance. Is this really a level 50 special elite? Feng looked at his own HP. He had less than 3,000 HP remaining. At most, he could receive 3 more hits before his life ended. Before Feng could even consider his options, the Blood Warrior appeared before him. Attacking with its saber, it sent Feng flying once more. Since Feng had rejoined God's domain, he had suppressed his opponents with his strength. This was the first time an opponent had beaten him so badly regarding strength and speed. In the face of absolute strength, all manner of trickery was useless. At this moment, Feng was reminded of the fact that attributes were the basics of combat in God's domain. Even if Feng could perceive the Blood Warrior's attack trajectories, he simply could not keep up with the special elite speed. If he could not even dodge the Blood Warrior's attacks, there was no point in considering a counterattack. If Feng received the Blood Warrior's saber a few more times, Feng's HP would be no more. Ha! Feng suddenly realized that the Blood Warrior had stopped attacking him. Instead, it turned around and walked back to where it came from, no longer interested in Feng. What's going on here? Despite needing only 2 more hits to end the battle, the Blood Warrior had stopped attacking him. Did I move out of its field of activity? Feng accepted this conclusion after giving it some thought. Otherwise, the Blood Warrior had no reason to spare him. It seems that I need to defeat the Blood Warrior if I wish to continue forward. However, with his current strength, it was utterly impossible to defeat the Blood Warrior. It would be easier without the Divine Might suppression. Feng thought as he glared at the passage walls. The Divine Might radiating from the walls had limited his strength significantly. Otherwise, he would not have been so helpless against the Blood Warrior's attacks. If I wish to pass the Blood Warrior, I only have 3 options. I can reduce the Divine Might suppression, improve my combat techniques, or improve my attributes. Without any of my skills, weakening the Divine Might will be impossible. As for techniques, that is not something I can improve significantly in a short time. It seems that my only choice is to raise my attributes. Feng then looked at his current level. At this point, he was at 61% of level 34. He was very close to reaching level 35. He currently wore a Tier 1 set equipment. As his level increased, the set's attributes would improve as well. Level 35 was considered a small milestone for equipment. Moreover, he also possessed epic and fragmented legendary ranked items. Once he reached level 35, those attributes would also increase. Let's level up then. Feng halted his advance. Instead, he retraced his steps. Feng had mostly grasped the blood refining passage's rules. He would encounter different monsters depending on where he was. Since he had entered the field belonging to the Blood Warrior, if he retreated to the previous field, his would return to the 4 blood fighters. Fortunately, the blood fighters provided a lot of EXP, so Feng did not level slowly. Moreover, he could also improve his techniques by facing the elite monsters. In such a way, Feng began an endless journey of grinding, his level rising little by little. Starmoon City, inside a VIP room of one of Starmoon's high-class restaurants. Currently, 3 people, 2 women and 1 man, occupied the luxurious and spacious room. All 3 were at least level 32. 1 woman had already reached level 33. This woman was none other than Zero Wing's vice leader, Aqua Rose. Sitting across from Aqua Rose were the Star Alliance's guild leader, Galaxy Past, and the Star Alliance's #1 elementalist expert, Purple Eye. Vice leader Aqua, let's be frank. Why did Zero Wing suddenly decide to banish the Star Alliance from Stone Forest Town? I don't recall our guild provoking your guild in any way, Galaxy Past asked quietly, trying his best to suppress the raging fire within him. The Star Alliance's progression into the Stoneclaw Mountains had slowed significantly. If this situation persisted, their previous advantages would vanish, and other guilds would overtake them. Had it not tasted the fruit known as Stone Forest Town, it would have been fine. However, after experiencing the benefits that Stone Forest Town offered, it was impossible for the Star Alliance to endure losing access to the town. Guild Leader Galaxy, don't tell me that you've agreed to Open Source Corporation's investment without knowing what was happening? Aqua Rose countered calmly. Or does Guild Leader Galaxy not know what kind of people have been harassing Zero Wing recently? After Aqua Rose's reminder, Galaxy Past quickly came to a realization. He had received some information mentioning a small conflict between Zero Wing and Open Source Corporation. However, he had never imagined that this enmity was so severe. Guild Leader Galaxy, I believe that you should have a general understanding of the situation. Today, I've come here to pass on a message from our guild leader. Narrowing her eyes, Aqua Rose coldly declared, if the Star Alliance doesn't enter an alliance with Zero Wing now, then it will be our enemy. What is your decision? Chapter 702. Swift and Ruthless. Become your enemy? Galaxy Past let out a laugh as he raised an eyebrow, a flame of anger igniting in his eyes. However, he quickly suppressed the emotion. Chuckling softly he said, Guild Leader Black Flame really hasn't changed. Although he had known about Black Flame's arrogance, he could not help his anger when it turned on him. However, he had to admit that, up until this point, not one guild had managed to do anything to Zero Wing. Aqua, you're saying that Zero Wing intends to go to war if the Star Alliance refuses to become its ally? Purple Eye asked, a hint of cold surfacing on her white, delicate cheeks. The killing intent she radiated even dropped the surrounding temperature by several degrees. The Star Alliance was a first-rate guild. Its survival until now spoke volumes to its strength. Why would it possibly cower due to an upstart guild? Besides, the Star Alliance currently had OSC's support. Starmoon City was the Star Alliance's home ground. If an all-out war broke out between their 2 guilds, Zero Wing would suffer tremendous losses. If not for Stone Forest Town, the Star Alliance would have lashed out against Zero Wing in the Stoneclaw Mountains long ago. You can interpret it as such, Aqua Rose nodded in acknowledgement. Feng's method was indeed crazy. Dealing with Open Source Corporation was already a huge headache. Now, he planned to tear away all pretenses with the Star Alliance. This decision would only place Zero Wing in even greater danger. Currently, Zero Wing was not in particularly advantageous position. Aside from Overwhelming Smile, Heaven's Burial, and the other White River City guilds eyeing Zero Wing covetously, now, they needed to deal with Open Source Corporation and the Star Alliance. If Zero Wing declared war on the Star Alliance, it went without saying that Overwhelming Smile and Heaven's Burial would also take action. At that time, Zero Wing would be exposed to attacks from the front and the rear. However, when dealing with a problem, one must be both swift and ruthless. Since they already knew that the Star Alliance had fallen under OSC's control, there was no doubt that the first-rate guild would become Zero Wing's enemy in the future. If they maintained the current peace, they would only prolong the inevitable. Zero Wing would eventually be at risk. Moreover, by declaring war on the Star Alliance, it would deter the other guilds. They would have to think twice before plotting against Zero Wing. Currently, as the Star Alliance had the home ground advantage, even without Stone Forest Town, the guild could continue their development in the Stoneclaw Mountains. However, the other guilds did not have that advantage. So what if we don't become allies? Galaxy Past sneered. In a low growl he asked, "Do you think the Star Alliance needs a rest stop like Stone Forest Town? Once the 15-day protection period is over and Zero Wing loses their NPC guards, the Star Alliance will be able to occupy the town at any given moment. Moreover, I believe that the other large guilds will also be very interested in the town." Guild Leader Galaxy is correct. However, might I remind you that Zero Wing has not yet started a war with the Star Alliance. Our guilds have not had any conflicts with each other in the Stoneclaw Mountains. If we go to war, however, Zero Wing cannot guarantee the safety of the Star Alliance members in the Stoneclaw Mountains. Guild Leader Galaxy, you know that Star Moon City doesn't have only one first-rate guild. Aqua Rose paid no attention whatsoever to Galaxy Past's threat. Zero Wing had the support of Stone Forest Town. Even if its members died, they could simply revive in the town. Ouroboros's members, Zero Wing's allies, could also revive in Stone Forest Town. Hence, Ouroboros could quickly send reinforcements into the Stoneclaw Mountains. Aside from Stone Forest Town, the nearest town players could revive in was over 10 hours away. If a fight broke out in the Stoneclaw Mountains, the Star Alliance's members would have to waste a lot of time to return. Aqua Rose refused to think about the resources and manpower that would go to waste. If the war persisted, it would definitely wear down the Star Alliance. Galaxy Past and Purple Eye's expressions grew serious upon hearing Aqua Rose's words. Yet, if they allied with Zero Wing, Open Source Corporation would not be pleased. How could the guild elders ever agree to an alliance that would anger a god of fortune like Open Source Corporation? Even his position as the Star Alliance's guild leader would be at risk. However, Galaxy Past did not wish to start a full-blown war with Zero Wing right now. Seeing Galaxy Past's troubled expression, Aqua Rose stifled a sigh heavy with emotion. Zero Wing had only recently established, yet with no backing whatsoever, it had become an existence that could even trouble the guild leader of a first-rate guild. Nothing like this had ever occurred during the virtual gaming world's long history. If the Star Alliance allies Zero Wing, our guild leader has promised to let the Star Alliance repair its equipment in Stone Forest Town at market price. Its members will also be able to revive in Stone Forest Town. In addition, the Star Alliance will be allowed to construct a guild residence in Stone Forest Town, allowing its guild members to transfer to the town swiftly and save on travel time, Aqua Rose said, her bright, charming lips curling into an alluring smile. What did you say? Galaxy Past's composure shattered. For a moment, he wondered if he had heard wrong. If Aqua Rose's words were true, then the Star Alliance's development speed in the Stoneclaw Mountains would rise by multiple times. Purple Eye was similarly shocked. She had never imagined that Zero Wing would be so generous. I've said all that needed to be said. I look forward to Guild Leader Galaxy's decision. We will only wait one day. After saying so, Aqua Rose turned and left the VIP room. Zero Wing's biggest problem right now was not the Star Alliance, but the Flower of Seven Sins. Hence, the guild's upper echelons needed to improve their strength quickly and prepare. Aqua Rose would not waste her time with the Star Alliance. Right now, she needed to challenge the Divine Colosseum's trial tower. Feng was going all out to provide the upper echelons with the 100-berry wine. They would be fools not to use it. Hence, both Fire Dance and Aqua Rose fully immersed themselves in the trial tower. As for the Stoneclaw Mountains, they could leave that to the guild's core members. After Aqua Rose left, Galaxy Past and Purple Eye remained within the luxurious room. Guild Leader, what should we do? Purple Eye asked, a hesitant expression on her face. Both the OSC's funding and Stone Forest Town's resources were sorely tempting. However, both organizations were just as threatening. No matter which side they chose, the consequences would not be light. If it were up to me, I would agree to Zero Wing's offer. However, the guild's main purpose when it established was to earn money for the company. The investment of a god of fortune like OSC is something all guilds strive for, Galaxy Past laughed bitterly. However, now that I think about it, this was all due to Zero Wing. OSC only chose to invest in the Star Alliance to deal with Zero Wing. Purple, gather the guild elders for a meeting immediately. They must all be present. I don't care if they're busy. I'll contact them right away. Suddenly, the Star Alliance's elders received a message. All of the elders, regardless of where they were required to attend the meeting in Star Moon Kingdom. This situation shocked the Star Alliance's members. As a first-rate guild, their development was widespread. The Star Alliance had created branches in several other kingdoms, each one managing themselves on their own. This was the first meeting since they had joined God's domain that required the presence of every elder. Time flowed quickly. Before he knew it, a day had passed in God's domain. Inside the blood refining passage, Feng had killed blood fighters almost without rest. He only took small breaks to recover his exhausted stamina, before returning to grinding blood fighters. After Feng killed another blood fighter, the sound of a system notification suddenly reached his ears. System. The blood refining stone has collected 1,000 points of blood energy. Do you wish to evolve it into a blood refining crystal? There was no guarantee that each blood fighter killed would generate blood energy. The more blood energy Feng accumulated, the less he could collect from the slain blood fighters. Who knew how many blood fighters he had slaughtered throughout the day to collect the 1,000 points of blood energy? Chapter 703. Improved Attributes. Evolve. Feng clicked Confirm. Although he did not know what changes would occur after upgrading the blood refining stone to a blood refining crystal, seeing as he had spent so much time to collect the required blood energy, the crystal should not be an ordinary item. Otherwise, it would not have dropped from the 9-headed magic snake. Suddenly, the magical black cube in Feng's hands crumbled, transforming into a half-transparent, blood-red crystal ball. There were even droplets of dark red liquid flowing within the crystal ball, each containing powerful life force. Why is there so much life force? Feng could clearly feel the life inside those droplets of blood. It was only slightly weaker than the water of life. But what kind of treasure was the water of life? Just one drop was enough to cure a crippled NPC. After accumulating a certain amount of the treasured water, one could even use it to revive a dead NPC. Meanwhile, the blood-red crystal in his hands contained over 10 droplets of blood that could rival the water of life. Just what kind of item is this? Unable to hold back his curiosity, Feng clicked to check the blood refining crystal statistics. Blood refining crystal. Dark gold rank item. Can absorb the life force of powerful monsters the wielder kills. After accumulating 100 points of blood energy, player can produce a drop of life essence. Can accumulate a maximum of 1,000 drops of life essence. Each drop can increase a player's stamina and concentration recovery speed for 2 hours. Current drops of life essences. 12/1,000. Is this the true power of the blood refining crystal? Feng was shocked when he read the statistics. In God's domain, it was common knowledge that players required rest to recover their stamina and concentration. Hence, players could not grind for long periods. They had to take breaks. Although there were some tools that sped recovery such as food and field tents, those items could only be used outside of combat. Feng also knew of a few items that could recover stamina and concentration during combat. However, these items were extraordinarily difficult to obtain. The Water of Life was one such item. However, using the Water of Life to grind for longer periods was no less than extravagant. Not a single guild in God's domain could afford such a waste. The other tools were similar to the Water of Life, in which they were extraordinarily valuable and exceedingly difficult to obtain. Even if a large guild mobilized its forces, it would barely obtain enough items to supply for a handful of experts. Feng had never expected the 9-headed magic snake to drop such a valuable item. With the blood refining crystal, he could recover stamina and concentration without having to stop his slaughter. With this, he could grind far longer than other players. Unfortunately, accumulating life essence was a slow process. At most, 2 or 3 players could use the crystal continuously. With the blood refining crystal, I can save plenty of time. Due to Feng's reliance on techniques to kill the blood fighters, he consumed far more stamina and concentration than usual. Moreover, the blood fighters in the blood refining passage were not easy opponents. In an intense battle, a player's stamina and concentration consumption rate increased by several folds. Hence, The blood refining crystal was a convenient item for Feng right now. Following which, Feng poured a drop of life essence into his hand and drank it. Suddenly, Feng felt his body relax, the fatigue he had accumulated from constant battle vanishing instantly. His mind also cleared. This really is a great item. Originally, Feng had intended to take a break after fighting for a little while longer. Now, it seemed that he no longer needed rest. After fighting the blood fighters for over a day, Feng was very familiar with their attack patterns. His swordsmanship had also become far more precise. During battle, Feng would try to discard extra attacks, pursuing efficiency. As a result, his swordplay became much faster, and he could now defeat the blood fighters with minimal effort. Feng had never considered these techniques before. He had only focused on ending the monsters he fought regardless of how much power he had to expend. After reaching the blood refining passage, however, he had to improve his attack efficiency if he wanted to kill his opponents quickly due to his inability to use skills. It was as if a new world had opened up to Feng. Initially, when facing 4 blood fighters simultaneously, Feng had needed over 150 moves to finish off just one of the undead. Among these 150 moves, more than 50 were used to defend himself against incoming attacks. He had to defend himself because he was unfamiliar with his surrounding, and as a result, this allowed the blood fighters to launch counterattacks. However, as the number of fights against the elites increased, he began to require fewer movements to defend himself. Now, he could defeat a blood fighter with roughly 130 attacks. For a time, Feng's leveling efficiency increased significantly. As time passed, Feng had become completely immersed in his swordsmanship. He no longer needed to think about how to streamline his attacks. Once he ran out of stamina, he just needed to drink a drop of life essence before returning to battle. Only after Feng reached level 35, and a golden glow illuminated his body, did he finally regain his senses. After training for so long, I should be at my limit. It's time to challenge the Blood Warrior again. Feng smiled faintly as he looked at his newly improved attributes. When he reached level 35, the golden stigmata increased all of his basic attributes by 5 points and provided 10 free attribute points. Meanwhile, as a tier 1 player, he received 8 free attribute points every time he leveled. The Abyssal Blade also provided a bonus of 2 free attribute points. After reaching level 35, Feng received 20 free attribute points in total and 5 points into all of his basic attributes. Furthermore, his tier 1 set equipment, the 7 Luminaries Ring, and the Heavenly Dragon's Breath had also received a significant boost to their attributes. During Feng's previous fight with the Blood Warrior, it was obvious that he lacked sufficient speed. Hence, he placed all 20 free attribute points into agility. Despite rising by only 1 level, Feng had improved his attributes almost as much as if he had equipped an additional piece of level 35 dark gold equipment. His strength had also improved. Blood Refining Passage, Blood Warrior's Combat Area. The Blood Warrior wielding a silver 2-handed saber appeared once more. Since Feng had already experienced the special elite, he would not allow the Blood Warrior to take the initiative to attack. Taking a step forward, he dashed towards the Blood Warrior. Previously, such an action would have been suicidal. With the Blood Warrior's attack speed, Feng had not been able to defend against its attack. It would have been utterly impossible to dodge the special elite's fearsome saber. In the next moment, the Blood Warrior tightened its grip on its saber. It then slashed forward, sending a streak of silver light plunging towards Feng. Boom! The silver 2-handed saber missed Feng. Feng had long since predicted the trajectory of the Blood Warrior's swing. Even before the Blood Warrior prepared to strike, Feng had prepared to dodge. If he had only begun dodging after the Blood Warrior launched its attack, with his current attributes, he would never have evaded it. Even blocking it would have been a challenge. Feng did not immediately launch a counterattack after evading the first slash. Instead, he abruptly fell backward. Hua! Another streak of silver light cut across the crown of Feng's head. Only after Feng evaded 5 strikes did he send a slash of his own at the Blood Warrior's side, causing a critical damage of -2,174. Although the strike had forced the special elite to retreat by half a step, it had not affected its combat power in the slightest. Even so, this result excited Feng. In his previous battle against the Blood Warrior, He had not been able to resist the undead in the least. Now, however, he managed to damage to the special elite. At this point, grinding away the Blood Warrior's 240,000 HP was only a matter of time. Chapter 704. Final Trump Card. The Blood Warrior launched one violent attack after the other, whereas Feng desperately dodged and blocked the special elite's attacks. As they exchanged more attacks, Feng refined his own actions, thinking of ways to deal faster damage. Minus 1042. Minus 2108. Minus 1071. One damage after another appeared above the Blood Warrior's head, its HP decreasing at a rate visible to the naked eye. Initially, Feng had to dodge 5 attacks before finding the opportunity to strike. However, as he refined his movements and gained a firmer grasp on his situation, he was soon able to attack after dodging every 4 attacks. In less than 5 minutes, the Blood Warrior's HP fell to 30%. In contrast, Feng had yet to receive any damage. Just as the Blood Warrior's HP fell below the 30% threshold, the crimson flames burning inside the skeleton's eye sockets turned dark green. The two-handed saber in its hands disappeared, and in its place, 2 long swords appeared in each hand. Damn it! Feng scowled at the change. There was a qualitative difference between avoiding a two-handed weapon and 2 one-handed weapons. While the Blood Warrior had used a two-handed weapon, it signified that its attacks carried absolute power. A single strike was capable of sending him flying. However, as long as he managed to evade its attacks, victory would be within his grasp. Now that the Blood Warrior used 2 one-handed weapons, however, the situation had changed. Although the power of attacks would lessen, it could double the number of attacks it dished out. To Feng, who had relied on evasion to survive until now, this was an extremely disadvantageous situation. The Blood Warrior's sudden transformation had caught Feng off guard. When the Blood Warrior launched its first attack, its blade moved as fast as the two-handed sword had, as fast as lightning. If he had not predicted the attack by the movements of the Blood Warrior's joints, it would have struck him. Against this first strike, Feng abruptly turned sideways, allowing the silver long sword to brush past his chest. Just as Feng thought of taking a step backward, the Blood Warrior's other sword arrived before him. Dang! Sparks scattered. The abyssal blade in Feng's hand barely blocked the Blood Warrior's fatal strike in time. As a result, however, Feng was forced to retreat by 4 steps before he could stabilize his body. Meanwhile, a damage of over minus 400 points appeared above his head. The Blood Warrior's destructive power with a one-handed sword was much weaker than with a two-handed saber. If Feng had a choice, however, he would very much prefer the saber-wielding Blood Warrior. I can only try my best. Feng quickly adjusted his footwork, using void steps as he saw the Blood Warrior coming in for a second wave of attacks. Suddenly, Feng vanished from the Blood Warrior's sight. Feng had no intentions of giving up this fight. Currently, the Blood Warrior had less than 70,000 HP remaining. If he strived for a little longer, he could defeat the special elite. Whether it was against players, monsters or NPCs, void steps was a very effective technique. Only, void steps was not suitable against high-tiered monsters and NPCs as these individuals possessed domains. The owner of a domain could grasp every movement within their domain. They had greater perception than what their vision provided, rendering void steps useless. However, the Blood Warrior was merely a special elite. Moreover, it was neither a high-intellect NPC nor a high-tiered monster. It could not cope with Feng's void steps at all. After Feng used void steps, he frequently disappeared and reappeared. Each time he appeared, he would inflict a significant amount of damage to the Blood Warrior. And every time the Blood Warrior tried to retaliate, Feng would vanish, preventing the Blood Warrior from locking on to its target. Although this move seemed like a bug, this was Feng's final trump card, which he normally avoided using. Void steps combined of both footwork and breathing techniques. The burden on its user's stamina was only secondary. Its main downfall was the massive stress it placed on its user's concentration. Even though Feng's brain activity had improved significantly, utilizing void steps frequently was a double-edged sword. He did not know when the technique would backfire and hurt him. Feng used void steps more than 40 times in a row, breaking his previous record. Meanwhile, the Blood Warrior's HP fell rapidly. Now, it had less than 40,000 HP remaining. Feng was also dizzy after using the advanced footwork so many times. He felt indescribable fatigue. However, if that were all, he could force himself through it. Fortunately, before the battle began, Feng had drunk a drop of life essence. Hence, both his stamina and concentration recovered rapidly right now. Otherwise, he would not have been able to stay conscious. 1 hit, 2 hits, 3 hits. The Blood Warrior could not resist in the least. It could only endure Feng's assault silently, its HP decreasing by the thousands. Very quickly, the Special Elite's remaining HP plunged from 40,000 to 30,000, from 30,000 to 20,000, and then finally falling to a critical state. In the end, Feng suddenly appeared behind the Blood Warrior and thrust his sword through its back, destroying its final strand of HP. I've really pushed myself to the limit this time. When Feng saw the Blood Warrior fall, he breathed a sigh of relief and slumped on the ground. If the battle had gone on any longer, Feng would have exhausted himself, losing his ability to use void steps and his control over his body. He would become sheep at the slaughter. Fortunately, he had succeeded. After the Blood Warrior died, Feng's experience bar increased by a sizable chunk. The EXP he obtained from the Special Elite was more than even a level 50 Lord offered. Immediately, he reached 9% of level 35. Aside from providing Feng with a large sum of EXP, the Blood Warrior also dropped a level 50 Fine Gold Cape. Blood Refining Cape, Fine Gold Rank. Level 50. Equipment requirement: Strength 400, Agility 800, Defense plus 571, Strength plus 68, Agility plus 54, Endurance plus 56, Movement speed plus 4, Evasion plus 15. Additional passive skill dash. Conceal. Increases the difficulty to perceive the wearer. Additional active skill dash. Lightning flash. Appear behind a maximum of 4 targets. Damage increased by 20%. Duration of 5 seconds. Cooldown: 2 minutes. What a good item. Feng's eyes shone as he examined the blood refining cloak. Capes were extremely rare in God's domain. They were even rarer than rings and ornaments. Even now, the only other cape Feng had found since joining God's domain in this life, and still used, was the Dark Pursuer's cape. Although the Dark Pursuer's cape provided very minor buffs to his attributes, the skill, Silent Steps, that the cape offered was very powerful. It could even rival an assassin's Shadow Steps. Only, the skill's cooldown was somewhat long. However, if used appropriately, it could set one up for an instant kill. In combat, such a skill was far more valuable than attributes. However, now that he had the blood refining cape, as soon as he fulfilled the equipment requirements, he would immediately replace the Dark Pursuer's cape. The requirement of level 50 was not a problem to Feng as he had the Heavenly Dragon's Breath, which reduced items' level requirements by 10 levels. In other words, he could equip the blood refining cape once he reached level 40. Although the 7 Luminaries ring also decreased the level requirement of all items by 5 levels, in God's domain, this effect was not stackable. The highest effect would apply. Aside from dropping the blood refining cape, the Blood Warrior also dropped an ancient gold-rimmed book. The pressure this ancient book radiated even caused Feng to shudder with fear. 2 large words graced the book's cover. Solomon's Treasure. Chapter 705. Whereabouts of a legendary item. This is Solomon's Treasure? Feng could not help his surprise. Originally, he had thought Solomon's Treasure would be a mountain of gold or an ocean of silver. It should at least be a high-ranking treasure chest. However, he had never expected Solomon's Treasure to be a book. Could it be an epic item? Thinking so, Feng picked up the ancient book. The pressure the book radiated instilled fear into anyone who neared it. This was a power that only an epic ranked or above item possessed. In God's domain, although epic weapons and equipment were precious, epic tools were far more rare. Take the Bible of Darkness for example. Even without occupying an equipment slot, It increased a player's strength significantly. This was a benefit that no weapon or piece of equipment could provide. After Feng picked up the book, he was suddenly alerted of a system notification. System. You have obtained the ancient document Solomon's Treasure. Do you wish to activate the ancient document? So, it's an ancient document. Excitement appeared on Feng's face upon hearing that the book was actually an ancient document. No wonder it's called a treasure. There were many kinds of books in God's domain. Some were meant for reading, some could be used to learn skills, and some offered their own abilities. The Bible of Darkness belonged to the third category. In addition to these three, there was another category that was extremely rare and special. The ancient document. Ancient documents held records of God's domain. However, players that obtained an ancient document had only one chance to activate it. Upon activation, players could obtain one of God's domain's secrets. Although this seemed trivial, in the past, players in God's domain had gone crazy over a single ancient document. In the past, ancient documents sold in the Blackwing auction house at much higher prices than even fragmented legendary items. Why were they worth so much money? They were so valued because an ancient document could unlock the whereabouts of a legendary item, offering players a high chance of obtaining one for themselves. Of course, aside from legendary items, one could also learn the whereabouts of powerful super skills or tools. However, with the goal of growing stronger, a legendary item was undeniably the best choice. Legendary items in God's domain were extremely limited. One had to expend unimaginable effort to claim one. One needed luck and strength. Every legendary item was extremely difficult to obtain. Moreover, the game would never reveal a legendary item's exact location to players, only clues. Unfortunately, clues were never 100% accurate, and most of the clues relating to legendary items were likely traps. Even after a long search, one might find nothing but a dead end, realizing that all their effort had been for naught. In the past, to obtain a single legendary item, many large guilds had mobilized every available guild force, spending a large amount of time to gain some clue. With the many clues they obtained, they would search for the location of said legendary item. One could just imagine the manpower and resources that the search required. Hence, even after mobilizing an entire guild, the chances of successfully claiming a legendary item were quite low. However, one could locate a legendary item with an ancient document. There was no need to check every clue they had obtained. Hence, ancient documents were precious and valuable. It seems that my trip wasn't a waste. Feng grinned as he looked down at the ancient document in his hands. Although he had quite a few clues regarding legendary items, he did not actually know how to obtain them, as no player would ever reveal such high-level secrets. In the past, those who had obtained legendary items kept a tight lid on any information. Feng had only found a few clues after his guild invested in quiet investigation. Although it is impossible to obtain a legendary item at my current level, knowing the precise whereabouts of one will allow me to prepare. Feng then clicked to activate Solomon's Treasure. After Feng confirmed his decision, Solomon's Treasure opened and released a blinding golden glow. In the next moment, a five-fold magic array appeared before Feng. Countless runes danced inside the magic array. Suddenly, the space surrounding Feng froze. Feng's connection with the outside world severed completely. System, Ancient Document, Solomon's Treasure, activating. System. Beginning connection with the main god system. System. Verification completed. Ancient document confirmed as the 6th volume of Solomon's Book. Allowing connection with God's Domain's database. System. Connection with God's Domain's database is successful. You have one chance to access God's Domain's database. Please enter desired inquiry. Luckily, I know the name of a legendary item. No one else would have any idea of what to search for. Feng's grin deepened. Immediately, he entered the words Solomon's Sword. System. Searching for information on Solomon's Sword. System. Search completed. Confirming data on Solomon's Sword. System. Confirmation completed. Do you wish to accept the information? Feng then clicked to accept. Feng felt a plethora of information relating to Solomon's Sword flow into his brain. The system displayed a total of 3,687 clues before him. Immediately, Feng felt a headache coming on. Verifying one clue was an extremely difficult task, not to mention 3,687. Even a large guild would go mad if it had to verify every one of these clues. At this point, Feng came to understand one thing. Those who had found legendary items were either players who had received the blessing of the main god system and possessed heaven-defying luck, or they were as frightening powerful as super guilds. Not only did super guilds have an abundance of members at their disposal, but they also possessed monster-like experts. Only with this kind of manpower could they search for a legendary item. It was practically impossible for a third-rate or second-rate guild. I didn't think that all of the clues I gained in the past were all fakes. Fortunately, I haven't attempted to verify those clues. Otherwise, I would have wasted a ton of time, Feng said, relieved. Among the 3,687 clues listed, the system only confirmed 5 as legitimate. In other words, only these 5 clues could lead him to Solomon's sword, one of the 10 great legendary weapons. If Feng had not obtained the ancient document, he would never find Solomon's sword. Of the 3,687 clues, every clue required a long time to verify. The easiest clue required one to spend 2 or 3 days' time, while the more difficult clues required up to half a month to verify. Moreover, due to level restrictions, Feng would not be able to visit many of these places yet. Even if he only needed to spend 1 day verifying each clue, it would still take 10 years to plow through them all. Without the ancient document, obtaining Solomon's sword was a dream. After receiving the information, Feng grew somewhat dizzy. Suddenly, the sound of another system notification reached his ears. Chapter 706. Disaster Treasure Chest. White River City, Divine Colosseum. Ever since they had discovered that the Flower of Seven Sins targeted Zero Wing, Aqua Rose and the guild's upper echelons had holed up inside the Divine Colosseum. They continuously expended magic crystals and 100-berry wine in the Trial Tower and Divine Battlefield to train as much as possible. As a result, Zero Wing's upper echelons broke their previous records in the Trial Tower again and again, shocking White River City's players. Awe towards Zero Wing swept through the city once again. Meanwhile, inside the Divine Colosseum, a bald man in gray leather armor stared at the trial list while sipping vodka. Suddenly, a thin, cloaked youth walked up and sat down beside this bald man. Accurate 9. What's the situation regarding Zero Wing's upper echelons? The thin youth sent a whisper to the bald man as he ordered an ice blue spirit. Their strength has been improving rapidly. Currently, 3 people have reached the 8th floor. 7 people have reached the 7th floor. My guess is that it won't be very long before the others reach the 7th floor as well. It would not be easy to kill all of them back to level 0, the bald man, Accurate 9, responded, laughing. However, the stronger they are, the better. This way, we can charge more for the job. Nodding, the thin youth said, indeed. I just wonder whether or not Open Source Corporation will be willing to pay the price. I think they will, Accurate 9 said as he handed the NPC bartender another magic crystal, purchasing another bottle of vodka. Magic crystals are the lifeline of all of God's domain's players. If OSC obtains the Stoneclaw Mountains, their future earnings will far surpass the cost of hiring us. Let's hope that OSC is willing to pay this price then. It's been a long time since I've accepted a major job. Zero Wing should prove to be quite the challenge. I can also use this chance to polish my skills a little bit, the youth said. Downing the ice blue spirit, he shifted his gaze to the 3 names listed on the trial list's 8th floor. Ha! Where's Black Flame's name? Black Flame has always been mysterious. Even now, I have yet to discover the exact extent of this person's strength. However, based on the information I've collected thus far, he should have progressed relatively far in the refinement realm. He might have even reached your standard, Accurate 9 said seriously as he sent a sideway glance at the thin youth beside him. My standard? The 2nd stage of the refinement realm? That's interesting. I look forward to taking him on, the youth said, a hint of excitement shining in his eyes. He looked like a predator that had just caught the scent of new prey. Pleiades, don't even think about it. Silver has already reserved Black Flame. At most, you can pick your target from the Trial Tower's 8th floor, Accurate 9 said, smiling as he pointed to violet clouds, fire dances, and aqua roses names. Silver? Why is he suddenly interested in this mission? The youth named Pleiades said, slightly surprised. Hasn't he always targeted those old monsters? How should I know what's going through his mind? Accurate 9 said, shrugging. However, OSC has lucked out this time. Normally, an expert of silver standards would not even consider this type of mission. Now, it's just a matter of whether OSC will pay to hire Silver. This fella named Black Flame really is unlucky. He has actually caught Silver's attention. Not even heaven can save him, Pleiades said sympathetically. The Flower of Seven Sins missions were divided into several levels. Experts within the organization were similarly ranked. An expert like himself only ranked at the intermediate level, whereas Silver was a peak expert in the Flower of Seven Sins. An expert like Silver dealing with Black Flame was simply a waste of time. As Pleiades and Accurate 9 occupied themselves with their conversation, one of Star Moon City's first-rate guilds, the Star Alliance, had officially declared war against Zero Wing, announcing their intentions to seize Stone Forest Town. This news spread quickly throughout Star Moon Kingdom. The Stoneclaw Mountains outer region. A 500-man team ravaged a half-orc settlement. A settlement typically contained lord-ranked half-orcs. A powerful settlement might even house 3 or 4 lords. 10 or more chieftain-ranked half-orcs usually patrolled the area as well. In this half-orc settlement, there were a total of 3 half-orc lords and 17 half-orc chieftains. However, against this team of 500 players, they could not offer any form of resistance. Currently, almost all of the settlement's half-orcs were already dead. Only one level 38 half-orc lord continued to resist desperately. In the end, however, a silver-armored female berserker still claimed its life. Snow, something has happened with the Star Alliance, Zhao Yueru, who wore a purple-red robe, suddenly reported. A moment ago, the Star Alliance declared war against Zero Wing and sent many of their elites to deal with Zero Wing's members. In the end, the Star Alliance's elders had been mesmerized by the money that OSC offered, Gentle Snow said, laughing lightly. Although I do not know what kind of hidden cards the Star Alliance possesses, this is a good opportunity for us. Contact our other members immediately. Tell them that Ouroboros is going to declare war against the Star Alliance as well. Shortly after, more shocking news spread throughout Star Moon City. The 2 first-rate guilds of Star Moon City were finally going to take action. This war would be unlike the previous small skirmishes. This time, both guilds would face each other head-on. In the future, whenever the members of either guild encounter each other, only one would walk away. Despite a storm currently brewing in Star Moon City, Feng was oblivious. System. Quest Solomon's Treasure completed. Quest rewards, 10 million EXP, 20 free mastery points, and 1 completely random treasure chest. After the system notification faded, Feng's experience bar increased by a small chunk. A wooden treasure chest emitting a purple glow appeared inside his bag. Completely random treasure chest. May contain a reward or a punishment. Disappears after 5 uses. Isn't this the disaster treasure chest? Feng was suddenly speechless as he stared at the dazzling treasure chest inside his bag. Completely random treasure chest was the name the system gave. The players who were familiar with the treasure chest, however, had another name for it. The disaster treasure chest. 9 out of 10 times, opening the completely random treasure chest resulted in a punishment. Moreover, the punishments were relatively severe. The punishments ranged from losing 1 or more levels to losing some attributes permanently. Some punishments even prevented players from gaining any EXP or reduced their attack power for many days. Hence, it gained the name Disaster Treasure Chest. Of course, if players obtained a reward, they deserved a celebration. In the past, many players had bragged on the forums about the rewards they had obtained. There were players who had actually gained an epic item from the random treasure chest, while some had obtained a complete dark gold set equipment. Others had been rewarded a top-tier mount. To put it simply, the rewards the treasure chest provided were extremely tempting. Reward and punishment, it was up to players to decide if the risk was worth it. To Feng, however, the potential benefits were greater than the risks. A player's luck attribute greatly affected the outcome of their draws. Even if Feng opened a punishment, due to his luck attribute, it was possible that the punishment would be light. Currently, Zero Wing faced the threat of the Flower of Seven Sins. Hence, it was of utmost importance that he grow stronger. Naturally, Feng would not let go of this perfect opportunity to improve his strength. Not to mention, his chances of obtaining a reward were much higher than others. Hopefully, I'll draw something good. Feng then activated Divine Providence and stretched out his hand to open the disaster treasure chest. Chapter 707. God's Sword. As Feng gradually opened the treasure chest, a golden ray of light escaped from the wooden box. Hua! The golden light merged with Feng's body. Feng immediately felt a renewed and improved strength, his accumulated fatigue weakening significantly. System: completely random treasure chest has been activated. Rewarding 10 points to hidden attribute. Fortitude. A hidden attribute as a reward. I've lucked out this time, Feng muttered as he clenched his fists. He could feel his fatigue lessening. Fortitude was the most important attribute among the 4 great hidden attributes. Hidden attributes would not increase a player's damage. Similarly, it would not decrease the damage a player received. However, they were far more useful than basic attributes. Unfortunately, hidden attributes would not increase with a player's level. They would only increase through special means. Meanwhile, fortitude was somewhat similar to a monster's mana body. First, it decreased the impact external injuries had on a player's combat power. The second effect was to decrease stamina and concentration consumption during battle, allowing players to fight for longer periods. Third, it reduced the impact stamina and concentration depletion had on a player's combat power. Due to these 3 major effects, players thirsted for the fortitude attribute. It was especially true for experts. Expert players normally incorporated certain combat techniques during battle. These combat techniques placed a heavy burden on their stamina and concentration. Take void steps for example. Although the burden on Feng's stamina was minimal, it was a massive burden on his concentration. Hence, Feng had to limit how often he used the technique in his fights. If a player's fortitude was sufficiently high, they could use such combat techniques far more often. In turn, this would improve their chances of victory. In addition, against high-tiered monsters such as a Grand Lord or monsters that possessed special skills that could reduce a person's stamina and concentration, fortitude was a severe advantage. In the past, there had been a Tier 5 player that had become famous due to his monstrously high fortitude. Berserker Saint Broken Flow. Due to his extraordinarily high fortitude, he opted to fight battles of mutual destruction. With such tactics, Broken Flow had even defeated those whose strength and techniques were superior to his. As a result, Broken Flow had become one of the 12 sacred berserkers. As God's domain was still in its initial stages, it was extremely difficult to obtain the fortitude attribute with players' low levels. Even Feng did not know of any good methods to gain the hidden attribute at his level. Normally, players would only begin to encounter the hidden attribute after level 50. Moreover, of the methods and quests Feng knew, the majority only rewarded 1 or 2 points of fortitude. The fact that he had managed to obtain 10 points now had saved him plenty of time and effort. Hence, Feng was quite satisfied. With how he had profited from opening the disaster treasure chest for the first time, Feng quickly proceeded to open it a second time. The second time he opened the treasure chest, he obtained the Tier 3 magic scroll, Thunder's Wrath. It was a Tier 3 large-scale destruction spell and covered an area of 100 yards. The third time Feng opened the treasure chest, a black beam struck him, and his agility attribute permanently decreased by 25 points. To ordinary players, a 25 agility point loss was massive. Even after obtaining their Tier 1 classes, they would have to level up 3 times to make up lost points. To Feng, however, the loss was acceptable. The Abyssal Blade already provided with an additional 2 free attribute points each time he leveled up. In addition to the Golden Stigmata, a loss of 25 agility would not affect him too badly. When players reached Tier 2, the amount of free attribute points they obtained with each level up increased to 20. At that time, it would be easy to make up for this loss. There were also plenty of tools that could permanently increase a player's attributes. In fact, Feng knew of a few that were relatively easy to obtain. Moreover, he had already obtained 10 fortitude and a Tier 3 large-scale destruction spell. Those two were more than enough to make up for this meager setback. When Feng opened the completely random treasure chest for the 4th time, he was struck by a purple beam. System. You have been cursed. EXP gain from killing monsters decreased by 70% for 10 days. Fortunately, I still have plenty of options to level up. Feng frowned slightly as he saw his new punishment. Very quickly, however, he dispelled the disappointment from his mind as he muttered, with 2 punishments in a row, let the last be a reward. Feng then opened the treasure chest for the final time. This time, a purple-red potion appeared inside the wooden box. Dragon Slayer Potion. Consumable. Increases all attributes by 100% and all resistances by 100 points for 1 minute. Cooldown. 3 hours. This potion is insane. Feng could not help his shock. In Feng's memories, the best potion he had ever seen only increased a player's main attribute by 100% and offered a small amount of magic resistance. The Dragon Slayer Potion, however, actually increased all attributes by 100%. This was, by far, the most intense attribute increase Feng had ever seen a potion offer. Even the effects of the Heavenly Dragon's Breath's activatable skill, Heavenly Dragon's Power, could not compare to this. If he drank this potion, it would be the equivalent of wearing an additional legendary item. He could challenge opponents of a higher tier. Unfortunately, the treasure chest only rewarded 1 Dragon Slayer potion. If he could produce more, the Flower of 7 Sins would be no more than a flea to 0 wing. After using all 5 draws, the completely random treasure chest disappeared. Feng then stored the Dragon Slayer potion away, and took out Solomon's treasure to begin sorting through the information he had gained regarding Solomon's sword. After using an ancient document, the information that flowed into the user's mind only offered a general summary, whereas the detailed information was recorded inside the ancient document. After Feng studied the information for several hours, he finally understood how he could obtain one of God's domain's 10 great legendary weapons, Solomon's sword. The complete Solomon's sword had long since disappeared. It had been shattered during the Great Destruction. Solomon's sword broke into 5 fragments and had been scattered throughout God's domain. Later, different people had found each of these fragments. These people had recast the shattered fragments to form new weapons. Each of these new weapons contained an immense power. However, due to the passage of time, the inhabitants of God's domain had forgotten about Solomon's sword. Instead, these 5 weapons had shaken God's domain with their might, their names passed down by the common populace. As the fragments of Solomon's sword had not been equal, the might of the new weapons differed from each other. Among the created weapons, the most famous was the 3rd-ranking sword on God's domain's famed swords list, Broken Steel. Broken Steel was leagues stronger than Feng's Abyssal Blade. There is no need to think about Broken Steel right now. With my current strength and level, it is impossible to obtain. I can only approach it slowly. Feng was extremely familiar with Broken Steel. However, he could not go after it right now. In the past, among the 12 sacred swordsmen, the number 1 sword saint used none other than Broken Steel. Feng had also witnessed the sword's might personally. Although it was not a legendary weapon, its attributes and skills were not much weaker than a legendary weapon. If he could obtain Broken Steel in this life, his strength would soar to unspeakable heights. Chapter 708. 5 Clues. As the most powerful sword among the weapons recreated from the fragments of Solomon's sword, Broken Steel was, naturally, the most difficult to obtain among the 5 weapons. Even if Feng wanted the challenge of obtaining it right now, only death would await him. Feng carefully researched the 5 clues. Among the 5 recreated weapons, 3 could not be obtained before reaching level 100. He could only attempt to find 2 while he was below level 100. Among these 2 weapons, the easiest was located at the top of the world. Dragon's Maw? Feng fell into deep thought when he realized where the clue led him. The Dragon's Maw was one of the regional maps found at the top of the world. It was a level 60 map. However, the area was far more dangerous than any ordinary level 60 map. Based on what Feng had heard about the Dragon's Maw, The map had even claimed the lives of many Tier 4 players. Moreover, they had died tragically. Not only had they lost some EXP and a piece of equipment, but they also permanently lost basic attributes upon death. Even Feng wasn't sure how much they had lost exactly. However, the fact that a level 60 map had even caused the deaths of Tier 4 players was more than a little intimidating. The Dragon's Maw was only a short distance from Mount Sogar. Feng only needed to travel across 2 leveling areas. If he left the blood refining passage, he could reach the map quickly. However, with his current strength, he was more than 90% certain that he would die there. Feng did not particularly mind dying. However, the risk of losing attributes outweighed the gains. If he wished to increase his chances of obtaining the weapon hidden in the Dragon's Maw, the best option was to go there after reaching level 50 and completing his class change. Fortunately, he didn't have to worry about someone else claiming the weapon before him. If one wished to travel to the top of the world through normal means, they would need the strength of a Tier 4 class at the very minimum. Unless, of course, they possessed a Tier 4 position teleportation scroll. However, such an item was extremely rare. A second Tier 4 magic scroll would most likely not appear in God's domain for a long time. Hence, the chances of players reaching the Dragon's Maw were practically non-existent. Just as Feng prepared to leave the blood refining passage and grind monsters nearby, he suddenly heard the sound of a system warning. What? I've used up the nutrient solution already? Didn't I just replace it yesterday? This sound was very familiar to Feng. If the nutrient solution were about to run out, the system would warn him. But it's already 4 in the afternoon right now. I should log out and get some rest. Feng had spent practically all of his time killing blood fighters in the blood refining passage. He had not logged out to train or relax. Now that he had completed his quest, this was a good time for him to take a break. Having made his decision, Feng logged out of God's domain. Inside the luxurious bedroom, the lid of the pure white virtual gaming cabin slowly lifted. Feng emerged. The sun illuminated his room, shining on a wide array of modern electronic smart devices displayed before Feng. As the Big Dipper Training Center's luxury villa, an ordinary apartment could never compare to the Greenwater Villa. Artificial intelligence managed the rooms, and whatever Feng wanted done, he only needed to issue the command, and the villa's AI would complete the task. It was an extremely convenient place to live. After exiting the virtual gaming cabin, Feng felt an indescribable physical weakness. Sure enough, I exhausted myself during my fight with the Blood Warrior. Feng smiled bitterly. Although he had always focused on improving his brain's activity, it was simply too difficult to get his hands on S-rank nutrient fluids. Even if he were the one providing the money, Big Dipper could only procure a limited quantity. To nurture Fire Dance and the others, he kept only 5 bottles for himself. Hence, he would use them conservatively. This was the reason that he did not use void steps unless absolutely necessary. However, this quest had been very important. If he had been unable to defeat the blood refining warrior, he would not have obtained the ancient document or discovered Solomon's sword's whereabouts. Following which, Feng drank 2 bottles of S-rank nutrient fluid before he recovered from his weakened state. S-rank nutrient fluids really are impressive. It's unfortunate that even Big Dipper can't obtain more in a short time. Otherwise, if I had a large supply, I could push Fire Dance and the others into the refinement realm quickly. Feng sighed with disappointment. Both Fire Dance and Violet Cloud had long since set half a foot into the refinement realm. However, neither could break past the final hurdle, entering the new world. Otherwise, with Fire Dance and Violet Cloud's equipment, their combat power could rank among the top 5 experts throughout Star Moon Kingdom. There were many expert players in God's domain. Neither the Red List nor the God's Domain Experts list could take into account every expert in Star Moon Kingdom. Among these experts, many were still unknown, hiding frightening combat power. Take the members of Midnight Tea Party for example. In the past, during God's Domain's early stages, the majority of the independent team's members had been unknown existences. However, every one of them possessed astonishing strength. Only, their goals differed from other players, so they had never bothered to make themselves known to the public. However, with Fire Dance and Violet Cloud's equipment advantage, there was a very high possibility that they would rank among the top 5 in the kingdom once they reached the refinement realm. Just as Feng was about to head to the gym to train, his quantum watch rang as his class's female monitor, Zhao Ruoshi called. Zhao Ruoshi's smiling face appeared on the screen. With a cold voice she asked, Feng, do you remember what today is? Feng was about to ask, but after hearing Zhao Ruoshi's tone, he immediately came to a realization. He had previously agreed to attend Zhao Ruoshi's birthday party. However, due to God's domain, he had completely forgotten about the event. Although Zhao Ruoshi wore a warm and elegant smile, Feng knew how angry his classmate actually was. As if she had known that Feng would forget about her birthday, Zhao Ruoshi sighed as she said, My car is parked outside the villa. You have 30 minutes. I'll be right there. Feng hurriedly began to tidy himself. Roughly 10 minutes later, Feng emerged from the Greenwater Villa. Zhao Ruoshi wore a navy blue dress and a pure white ribbon atop her head. Her long, silky hair swept down to her waist, her prideful figure even rivaling gentle snows in God's domain. As she stood beside her luxury sports car, passers-by could not help but turn to look at her. Who is that? She's so beautiful. She's even more beautiful than our school's beauty. I wonder who she's waiting for? Some of the men training at the Big Dipper Training Center drooled as they stared at Zhao Ruoshi. However, as this was the Greenwater Villa, the person living here was definitely someone extraordinary. Hence, the most they did was look, none of them daring to approach Zhao Ruoshi. You're finally here. Get in. Zhao Ruoshi, who had initially worn a displeased expression, revealed a happy smile when she saw Feng. Hurry up. We should still be able to make it in time if we leave now. What's the rush? Isn't the party at 6? Feng asked curiously. You'll understand once you get there. Zhao Ruoshi revealed a proud smile. Pretending to be mysterious, she said, however, when the time comes, you'll definitely be shocked. Shocked, huh? Feng simply smiled in response, no longer probing the matter as he slid into the car. Zhao Ruoshi then stomped on the accelerator, her sports car rolling up a cloud of smoke as it left the Greenwater Villa. Chapter 709. Birthday Party. High-rise buildings loomed over the bustling downtown streets. However, there were two buildings that stood out from the rest. A pair of twin towers that were over 300 stories tall. The twin towers shone like the city's emperors, overlooking all life inside the city limits. These towers had long since become one of the symbols of Jinhai City. At the same time, the twin towers were also Jinhai City's famous six-star hotel, the Blue Ocean Horizon. Having a meal or staying a night in this hotel cost more than a month's salary for an ordinary office worker. Normally, only Jinhai City's big shots could afford to dine or rest here. Ordinary people could only watch from far away. Zhao Ruoshi was the Zhao Group's princess. The Zhao Group's influence in Jinhai City was massive. Their yearly income was astounding. Furthermore, they were one of the Blue Ocean Horizon's major shareholders. Zhao Ruoshi stopped her car in front of the Blue Ocean Horizon's entrance. Immediately, four valets came up and opened the driver's door respectfully. When Zhao Ruoshi exited her car, the four valets were momentarily mesmerized. However, they very quickly snapped out of their daze. Not only was Zhao Ruoshi an absolute beauty, but she also arrived in an impressively luxurious car. There was no doubt that her identity was extraordinary. She also exuded a noble aura. She was definitely out of their lowly reach. Meanwhile, Feng, who emerged from the other side of the car, similarly shocked the four valets, though in an entirely different way. As the Blue Ocean Horizon's valets, they had seen all sorts of people. Hence, they were quite confident of their judgment, particularly of a person's attire. Although Feng wore a very fitting suit, based on the suit's design and fabric, they could immediately tell that it was nothing special. The suit was far below the Blue Ocean Horizon standards. Is he a bodyguard? The four valets wondered. However, they were surprised when Zhao Ruoshi slid her arm into Feng's as they made their way into the hotel. The valets' eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. All four were utterly dumbfounded. After entering the Blue Ocean Horizon, Zhao Ruoshi led Feng to the hotel's top floor. There one could view Jinhai City in its entirety. The sight was breathtaking. Many people already mingled inside the large, magnificent banquet hall. They were all famous figures and held influential positions within the city. Normally, it would be difficult to meet even one of them. Today, however, so many of these powerful figures had gathered here. One could just imagine how much influence the Zhao group possessed. Is that the young lady of the Zhao group? A handsome young man in a white suit could not help but shift his gaze towards Zhao Ruoshi, who had just entered the hall. Unconsciously, he muttered, "If I can marry her, I won't have to lift a finger for the next 100 years. You. Lan Hailong, who was dressed in a black, high-class suit, shook his head. Smirking, he said, "Duan Xianglin, you don't recognize the man beside the young lady, do you? Looking at how he's dressed and his peasant-like temperament, do you think he could be a challenge for a prince of a major financial group like myself?" The youth named Duan Xianglin asked disdainfully. Although the Duan group could not compare to the Zhao group, it was still one of the top-ranking financial firms in Jinhai City. If he wanted to, a group of beautiful women would flock to him with a wave of his hand. How could a lucky peasant possibly be a match for him? Moreover, even if Zhao Ruoshi had taken a liking to the brat, the Zhao group would never agree to the match. I guess it's expected that you don't know. After all, you only recently returned to the city. The man beside Miss Zhao is Feng. He is the martial arts master who is currently in charge of the Big Dipper Training Center. Duan Xianglin suddenly fell silent. Although he doubted the claim, Lan Hailong was a good friend of his. He had no reason to lie to him. Moreover, there was no point to such a lie, as the truth would come to light with a little investigation. If Feng had become an internal force expert at such a young age, it would not be surprising if he became a top-level international fighter in the future. They were currently living in the age of combat. The reputation and status an international fighter possessed were immense, and even an existence like the Zhao group want to fawn over them, not to mention a small financial group. Lan Hailong had a complex look in his eyes as he watched Feng enter the banquet hall. Not too long ago, Feng had merely been a minor character, yet the youth had become someone who even he looked up to. However, Lan Hailong did not look up to Feng due to his title as a martial arts master, but due to Zero Wing. Among everyone present, only Lan Hailong truly knew how amazing Feng was. Currently, God's Domain's popularity grew by the day, with major corporations investing in the game with fervor. One could already imagine what kind of future the game would offer its experts. Although the Shadow Guild under his control had developed fairly well so far, compared to Zero Wing, Shadow was a joke. Shadow was just one of the many guilds in White River City. However, Zero Wing had become the city's absolute overlord. Even Stone Forest Town, which every guild in Star Moon Kingdom lusted after, had fallen under Zero Wing's control. The Stone Claw Mountains were Zero Wing's backyard. If Zero Wing continued developing at this rate, it might even be possible for the upstart guild to become Star Moon Kingdom's overlord. The guild's influence at that time could easily be surmised with one word: frightening. Meanwhile, Lan Hailong had heard that Feng had become one of Zero Wing's upper echelons. Hence, how could he possibly not be impressed? It would have been awesome had I managed to form a close relationship with him. It is all that foolish Ling Feilong's fault. He made me lose such a perfect opportunity. Even now, Lan Hailong grew angry whenever he thought about Ling Feilong. However, he had long since banished Ling Feilong from Shadow Workshop, severing all ties with the foolish bastard. Otherwise, in the off chance Ling Feilong managed to provoke Feng, he would cry himself to death if Feng mobilized Zero Wing to deal with Shadow. Inside one of the luxurious rooms on the top floor banquet hall, two middle-aged men conversed quietly. One wore a silvery gray suit, while the other wore a set of white robes. When Zhao Ruoshi entered the room with Feng, the two men ended their conversation immediately and shifted their gazes towards Feng. "Old Zhao, this must be the little brat you've been talking about, right?" "Indeed, I am impressed." The white-robed man could not help but utter words of praise after giving Feng a rough evaluation. Zhao Jianhua, who wore the silver suit, said happily, "Of course. Didn't I say that Ruoshi's foresight is much better than mine?" "Second uncle." A faint blush appeared on Zhao Ruoshi's cheeks. Hurriedly explaining, she said, "It's not what you think." I get it, Zhao Jianhua nodded, giving his niece an understanding look. While Zhao Jianhua poked fun at Zhao Ruoshi, Feng focused his attention on the middle-aged man beside Zhao Jianhua. Feng could feel the aura of a martial artist coming off of this man. However, His aura was different from that of experts like Lei Bao. Standing before this white-robed man, Feng felt as if this man's aura dominated the room. It felt as if the white-robed man were the ruler of this space. A domain? Feng could not help his shock. However, he quickly denied this thought. No, that's not right. This isn't a domain. Having a domain is like forming a separate world around oneself. Owners of domains have absolute control within their domains. These existences can no longer be considered human. The danger they give off is also on a whole different level. Although the white-robed man before him was not as powerful as Martial Dragon, he was not far from achieving a domain, either. Just who is this? Feng wondered as he watched the white-robed man before him. There were extremely few internal force experts in the world. However, looking at the man before him, Feng judged that not only was he an internal force expert, but he was also a monster who was close to grasping a domain. Such a character had actually appeared in a small place like Jinhai City. It was truly inconceivable. Chapter 710. The Mysterious Feng. Ever since Feng's brain activity had improved, his senses had become extraordinarily sharp. The white-robed man before him hid his strength very well. Currently, he felt like the quiet ocean that would accommodate everything. He felt comfortable to be around. In front of this man, Feng could not find it in himself to generate any hostility at all. However, it was precisely because of this that Feng was afraid of him. He had honed his senses through countless life and death battles in God's domain. Particularly, after his brain activity had improved, it had become a lot harder for others to put his mind at ease. However, the white-robed man's every action easily slipped through his warning senses. If the man before him suddenly decided to strike, the consequences would be dire. Young man, you are really impressive. You have actually become one of Zero Wing's upper echelons at such a young age. Sure enough, Zero Wing has hidden itself quite deeply, the white-robed man said in a very friendly tone as he smiled at Feng. Ah, right. I haven't introduced myself. I'm Yuan Tiexin, an elder of the Secret Pavilion. Feng, haven't you been playing God's domain for some time? Uncle Yuan is an expert of the virtual gaming world's older generation. Although he might not be a match for you in real life, in virtual reality games, he might be even more powerful than you. This is a good chance to ask him for some guidance, Zhao Ruoshi said, her lips unconsciously curling into a smile when she saw Feng's surprised expression. Before this, Feng had maintained a calm composure. He had always been the one to hold the initiative. Now that she watched something fluster Feng, she could not help but feel a little proud of herself. Feng was speechless when he saw Zhao Ruoshi's joyous look. Yuan Tiexin was a hidden expert in the truest sense of the word. Both in fighting and gaming, the middle-aged man was far above him. It was a fact that he had played God's domain for more than a decade now. However, one's superiority was not determined by the amount of time one played God's domain. Otherwise, there would not have been so many players stuck at Tier 2, unable to advance to Tier 3, even after 10 years. One also had to take into account aspects such as opportunity, talent, and luck. For example, most people would live out their lives in obscurity. Some would spend only a few years to reach astounding heights that others would never touch throughout their entire lives. God's domain was similar in this manner. Feng was not so arrogant as to think that he was invincible in God's domain. He had only utilized his memories to obtain certain opportunities. Little girl, you speak too highly of me. Young man, I was only interested in meeting you after hearing Ruoshi say that she'd bring someone promising, one of Zero Wing's upper echelons, to suggest asking me for guidance. I'm not that amazing of a person. You can just call me Uncle Yuan, Yuan Tiexin said, chuckling as he shook his head. Let's have a seat before we continue our chat. Although Yuan Tiexin had spoken casually, Feng did not dare to be careless around the man. The Secret Pavilion was not just any guild. It was an existence that everyone in the virtual gaming world knew. The Secret Pavilion specialized in collecting and selling information on the major powers of various games. The Secret Pavilion ability to compile the God's Domain experts list showed how skilled it was in gathering information. Uncle Yuan, you've constantly talked about Feng's status in Zero Wing. Is Zero Wing an amazing guild? Zhao Ruoshi asked curiously. Zhao Jianhua was also curious. Yuan Tixin had mentioned Zero Wing multiple times now and had even praised Shifeng's potential. After knowing Yuan Tixin for so long, this was the first time he had seen the man react in such a way. Although he did not have much contact with virtual reality games, he knew that Yuan Tixin's status in the virtual gaming world was quite high. Particularly, after God's Domain became popular, Yuan Tixin's status had grown with it. Many major international corporations had tried to contact Yuan Tixin, some going as far as fawning over him. Although their Zhao group possessed some status and wealth in Jinhai City, they were nothing compared to those major international corporations. They were not even on the same level. Yet, such powers fawned over Yuan Tixin's. Although this was Zhao Ruoshi's birthday party, Zhao Jianhua had been surprised that he had convinced Yuan Tixin to attend. Zhao Jianhua knew Yuan Tixin's itinerary. Today, he should be meeting with the upper echelons of a major international corporation, yet he had come here instead. The man had not attended out of respect for Zhao Jianhua, either. He had joined them today to meet Feng. Thinking up to this point, Zhao Jianhua could not help but inwardly sigh. However, he was also pleased. You too might not know this since you don't play God's Domain, but Zero Wing is a very popular guild in the virtual gaming world. It has caught the attention of various parties. Based on my understanding, even Open Source Corporation has set its eyes on Zero Wing, going so far as to offer a high price to purchase some of the guild's shares. However, Zero Wing had rejected OSC, Yuan Tixin exclaimed. Open Source Corporation? The Open Source Corporation which focuses on trading new energy? Zhao Jianhua did not dare believe it to be true. Hence, he wanted to confirm if the Open Source Corporation Yuan Tixin mentioned was the major corporation that he knew. Yes. I was quite shocked when I received the news. I never thought that the youngsters these days would act so impulsively. There are countless guilds hoping to gain OSC's financial support. This is my first time hearing of someone actually refusing OSC's offer. Yuan Tixin nodded. Chuckling, he said, I've come here for two reasons. First, I wanted to see Ruoshi. Second, I wanted to meet this upper echelon of Zero Wing that I've heard so much about in the hopes that I can arrange a meeting with the incomparably mysterious guild leader, Black Flame. I wonder if I can have the honor? Zhao Jianhua and Zhao Ruoshi were dumbfounded when they heard Yuan Tixin's words. They shifted their gaze towards Feng. Rejecting Open Source Corporation's investment was shocking enough. They had never imagined that Yuan Tixin had actually come here in person to obtain Feng's help. For a moment, both Zhao Jianhua and Zhao Ruoshi's minds were blank. However, as the person of interest, Feng wore a calm expression as he said, Since Uncle Yuan wishes to meet my guild leader, I will try my best to get in touch with him for you. However, the guild leader has always been a busy man. I cannot guarantee that he will be willing to meet with you. I hope that Uncle Yuan can forgive me. Certainly. I also hope you will pass on a message to guild leader Black Flame for me. The Flower of Seven Sins has begun to act, Yuan Tixin said very confidently. I believe that once guild leader Black Flame receives this information, he will accept my request. When Feng heard the news of the Flower of Seven Sins taking action, his heart involuntarily shuddered, a serious expression appearing on his face. The secret pavilion had obtained this information. There was no need to question its authenticity. Since Yuan Tixin had reported that the Flower of Seven Sins was on the move, it meant that Exemplary Willow was willing to pay the Flower of Seven Sins price. Aqua Rose had already told him that the guild's upper echelons were rapidly growing stronger. At this moment, 3 of them had reached the 8th floor, and 7 people had reached the 7th floor. As for everyone else, they were all at the late stage of the 6th floor. The Flower of Seven Sins price was undoubtedly astronomical. Has that woman lost her mind? No matter how Feng thought about it, this was not a worthy trade-off. Unless... Chapter 711. Violent Dragon Set. After the birthday party ended, Feng immediately returned to the Greenwater Villa and logged back into God's Domain. Yuan Tixin had already made himself very clear with his words. If Feng wished to find out more about the Flower of Seven Sins, then it would be best if he contacted the man. Since the Flower of Seven Sins had already started taking action, then what he needed to do right now was prepare for the upcoming battle. If he had information on the exact movements of the organization, at the very least, he would not be caught off guard. The Flower of Seven Sins had yet to fail at a job. If the organization truly managed to annihilate Zero Wing's upper echelon, it would deal an irrecoverable blow to the guild, especially now that the Star Alliance had declared all-out war on Zero Wing. In fact, during the time Feng was at the party, many battles between the two guilds had occurred both inside and outside the Stoneclaw Mountains. Fortunately, though both sides had suffered losses, Zero Wing had the upper hand since it also had help from Ouroboros. Even so, the situation was not looking too good, as the Star Alliance also had many red names and workshops on its side. This situation prevented the members of Zero Wing from focusing on grinding at the Stoneclaw Mountains. On the sidelines, other guilds were quietly eyeing Zero Wing as well. If this situation dragged on, it would be extremely detrimental towards the level and equipment of Zero Wing's members. On top of that, if Zero Wing's upper echelon were to suffer complete annihilation, the blow to the guild would be fatal. Then, the various guilds grinding at the Stoneclaw Mountains would definitely have designs on Stone Forest Town. At that time, if these guilds were to band together with the Star Alliance to deal with Zero Wing, Feng did not wish to see such a situation take place. When Feng logged back into God's domain once more, he had already been teleported out of the blood refining passage, appearing at the foot of Mount Sogar. He immediately opened his friends list and chose to add a friend. Feng had set his friends list so that it was shielded, which prevented others from adding him as a friend. As for messages and calls, his settings automatically rejected those from strangers. Hence, other than his friends, nobody had any way of contacting him. Yuan Tiexian had told Feng that his God's domain ID was Grilled Iron Heart. Currently, Feng was using his identity as Black Flame to add Yuan Tiexian as a friend. As long as Yuan Tiexian agreed to the friend request, the middle-aged man would be able to contact Feng right away. Less than 5 minutes after Feng sent out the friend request, the system notified him that Grilled Ironheart had agreed to become his friend. It really has been difficult for the secret pavilion to get in touch with you, Guild Leader Black Flame. Since Guild Leader Black Flame has taken the initiative to contact me, then you must be very interested in the information regarding the Flower of Seven Sins, Yuan Tiexian said slowly. Guild Leader Black Flame, you should know that the secret pavilion thrives on trading information. If you wish to obtain information on something, then you have to pay an appropriate price for it. I believe Guild Leader Black Flame should understand this point, right? I understand what you are trying to say. Without a doubt, you guys must be aiming for the magic crystals in the Stoneclaw Mountains. Yet, it also won't be so convenient for you to obtain them. Hence, seeing as you are trying to make contact with me at this time, you must be hoping to set up a foothold at Stone Forest Town, correct? Initially, Feng had felt it strange that a major character like Yuan Tiexian would appear at Zhao Ruoshi's birthday party. However, when the middle-aged man had brought up his wish to make contact with Black Flame, Feng immediately understood his goal. The magic crystal was an essential resource required for a player to develop in God's domain. Although the various kingdoms and empires around the continent also had their own regional dungeons that could produce magic crystals, these regional dungeons remained undiscovered. Moreover, even if some countries had activated their regional dungeons, the drop rate of magic crystals there could not compare to the Stoneclaw Mountains. The Stoneclaw Mountains was an Azura mode regional dungeon. A regional dungeon of such high difficulty would naturally have much better drop rates than other regional dungeons. Although the secret pavilion was quite a lofty existence in God's domain, it had yet to reach the standard of an omnipotent god. The secret pavilion might not have much need for coins, weapons, and equipment, but it was a different story for magic crystals. After all, if they wished to maintain their status as a lofty existence, strength was still necessary. For example, the current Yuan Tiexian, whom Feng was looking at through the video chat, carried a flame-shaped shield and wore spiked scale armor. This spiked scale armor set was the Violent Dragon set, a level 30 dark gold set equipment meant for shield warriors. To obtain the entire set, one had to complete a series of high-level quests that was utterly impossible without a very powerful 100-man team. The difficulty of the quests was only slightly lower than the difficulty of raiding a 100-man team dungeon. One could just imagine how powerful the secret pavilion was. It should be known that Feng had relied on special means to clear a 100-man Hell Mode team dungeon. Otherwise, raiding the Hell Mode Frost Prison would have been utterly impossible. Guild leader Black Flame is certainly amazing. That's right. The secret pavilion is indeed very interested in the Stone Claw Mountains. Hence, we hope to set up a guild residence at Stone Forest Town, Yuan Tiexin said laudatorily. Practically everyone within the secret pavilion was familiar with the name of Black Flame by now. As for why they were very familiar with it, it was not because Black Flame was the #1 expert of Star Moon Kingdom. Rather, it was because Black Flame had managed to kill one of the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's strongest fighters, Martial Dragon. Although he had the aid of a personal guard, that, too, could be considered a part of his own strength. Straight to the point, I see. I wonder, what benefits can the secret pavilion bring to me, then? Feng asked, smiling bitterly. In truth, letting the secret pavilion establish a guild residence in Stone Forest Town would not affect Feng in any way. The secret pavilion's home ground was not in Star Moon Kingdom. It would not have any conflicts of interest with Zero Wing. After all, Zero Wing was not yet strong enough to prevent others from entering the Stone Claw Mountains. Moreover, if the secret pavilion invested in Stone Forest Town, Zero Wing could also earn some repair fees from the guild. However, even though there were no demerits, that did not mean he should let the secret pavilion enter Stone Forest Town for free. Guild leader Black Flame can rest assured on this point. The secret pavilion can provide you with the general information regarding the Flower of Seven Sins hit list on Zero Wing and the assigned assassins. To know one's own strength and the enemy's is the sure way to victory. I believe that, with this information, Guild leader Black Flame will have a much easier time coping with the situation. Although Yuan Tiexin had said these words very casually, Feng's heart was already beating madly at this moment. Feng had never imagined that the secret pavilion was such a frightening existence. The Flower of Seven Sins was a very mysterious organization in the virtual gaming world. Its movements were kept even more of a secret from others. Yet, the secret pavilion was actually able to obtain such information. It was simply inconceivable. If I have this information, with Zero Wing's current state, we should be able to cope with the assassinations of the Flower of Seven Sins. Feng had some knowledge regarding the jobs carried out by the Flower of Seven Sins. Normally, the organization would send out assassins according to the mission's difficulty. Unless it was absolutely necessary, the organization would not field an overwhelming force to complete a mission. Feng did not think that the Flower of Seven Sins would rank an upstart guild like Zero Wing that highly on their mission board. If he responded properly, Zero Wing had a definite chance of defeating the Flower of Seven Sins. If the Flower of Seven Sins failed a mission, they would drop it. Moreover, they would return only half of the remunerations paid. Unless, of course, someone spent more money to commission a new mission. At that time, however, the price would be more than double that of the first time. Feng did not believe that Open Source Corporation would be willing to spend that much money on commissioning another hit on Zero Wing. May I know Guild leader Black Flame's thoughts on this? Yuan Tiexin asked, smiling. Chapter 712. 3 Realms of Refinement. Okay, I can agree to your conditions. However, aside from providing information on the assassins this time, you guys must also keep me updated on the latest developments of the Flower of Seven Sins. Feng put out another request after giving the situation some more thought. Since the secret pavilion was able to uncover the hit list and hit men, it would be an easy task for the guild to find out the specific time when the organization would take action. If he knew the general timing of when the Flower of Seven Sins was going to attack, he would have a better chance of laying a trap to deal with the organization's hit men. Combat in God's domain was not just limited to simple ambushes. There were various sorts of means one could use to deal with other players. Only, the mindset of current players was still confined to previous virtual reality games. This thinking held that only players could be used to deal with other players. In fact, one could also employ traps in PvP. As long as one knew the opponent's movements and then proceeded with setting up a trap at a fixed location, one could kill off their targets without even lifting a finger. Moreover, even if the trap could not finish off the target, one could still gain the initiative in the battle, placing their opponent in a disadvantageous position. Deal. As long as they make a move, I'll notify you of it immediately. However, even I will only be able to tell you the general time frame for when they take action. As for when and where exactly they are going to take action, those are far beyond the abilities of the secret pavilion. Yuan Tiexian agreed immediately, his voice filled with confidence and determination. He had long since guessed that Feng would ask for something like this. A short moment later, both parties signed a contract through the main god system. Feng would provide a location in Stone Forest Town for the secret pavilion to establish its guild residence, while the secret pavilion would provide Feng with reports relating to the Flower of Seven Sins movements against Zero Wing. After the contract was signed, Feng received the report he wanted from Yuan Tiexian almost immediately. Sure enough, he really is an old fox. After taking a look at the information, Feng found that the file included even the latest movements of the Flower of Seven Sins. Yuan Tiexian had obviously prepared this report long before their conversation. The middle-aged man had only been waiting for him negotiate for it. However, Feng could not help but admit that the trade this time was very worthwhile. Even if he spent a large sum of credits to investigate the movements of the Flower of Seven Sins, it was unlikely he could come up with the information he wanted. Currently, the Flower of Seven Sins had yet to establish a permanent base of operations in God's domain. Moreover, the organization was not a guild. All its members were independent players, and every member of the organization was extremely mysterious. Just investigating one member would be an extremely complicated task, not to mention carrying out an investigation on the movements and strengths of the majority of the organization's members. Only a force like the Secret Pavilion could achieve such a feat. If not for the Secret Pavilion's interest in the Stoneclaw Mountains this time, Feng did not believe the Secret Pavilion would sell him this information even if he asked for it. After all, not only would the guild provoke the Flower of Seven Sins by doing so, but it would also expose some of the Secret Pavilion's capabilities. Guild Leader Black Flame, in celebration of our first successful cooperation, I will provide you with additional information. The major forces eyeing Zero Wing right now aren't limited to Open Source Corporation. Some have already begun taking action. While dealing with the Flower of Seven Sins, it is best to take additional precautions. Yuan Tiexian laughed. He then disconnected the call. Other major forces are participating in the struggle this time? Feng's expression suddenly grew serious. In the past, the Star Alliance had been the one that managed to obtain the Stoneclaw Mountains in the end. Back then, the average level of players was much higher. The Stoneclaw Mountains had also been mostly developed. Quite a number of regional dungeons that could produce magic crystals had also appeared in other kingdoms and empires. Hence, the various major forces of God's domain naturally would not bother going out of their way to lay claim to the Stoneclaw Mountains. However, things were different in this life. He had managed to obtain Stone Forest Town a lot earlier thanks to the special means he had employed. However, this had also resulted in a situation where obtaining Stone Forest Town was equivalent to claiming the Stoneclaw Mountains. It seems that I've gone a little overboard this time. Feng could not help laughing bitterly as he shook his head. However, if I didn't take the opportunity to obtain Stone Forest Town back then, doing so would have become much more difficult in the future. It also wouldn't have become the gold mine that it is right now. Forget it. Since things have already gotten to this point, I can only deal with the problems as they crop up. Thinking up to this point, Feng began analyzing the information supplied by the Secret Pavilion. Open Source Corporation really is going big this time. They're actually targeting the members of the main force as well. Feng involuntarily sucked in a breath of cold air after reading the report. The Flower of Seven Sins had a very high asking price. OSC had paid for 2 deaths for every member of Zero Wing's main force. Although that number was much lower than for Zero Wing's upper echelon, for whom OSC had paid for 10 deaths each, it would still weaken Zero Wing's main force significantly. But really though, the people from the Flower of Seven Sins are sure looking down on Zero Wing. They are actually sending less than 50 members to deal with us. Giving the list of assassins a glance, Feng could immediately tell how confident the Flower of Seven Sins was. They had not bothered relying on numbers at all. Although Secret Pavilion's information was not complete, judging from what was in the report, every one of these people could be considered a top-tier expert in God's domain. They all were level 33 and above, and even their most inferior equipment was level 30 fine gold set equipment. The Secret Pavilion really is powerful. They even have a general assessment of the combat standards of these people. After carefully looking through the secret pavilion's report, Feng gained a new understanding of the guild. The secret pavilion was simply terrifying. Compared to the level of detail in this report, the information the secret pavilion published on the God's Domain experts list was child's play. However, the Flower of Seven Sins was indeed as frightening as the rumors made it out to be. Of the assassins the organization sent, over 30 people had already set foot into the refinement realm. No matter which guild these experts were in, they would surely rank among the top of the guild. Yet the Flower of Seven Sins had actually managed to dispatch over 30 of such people. Among these 30-plus people, 7 had even managed to reach the next stage of the refinement realm, the Flowing Water realm. However, the most powerful assassin sent by the Flower of Seven Sins was not one of those 7 Flowing Water realm experts. Instead, it was an expert who had reached an even further realm. The categorization of a player's combat power using combat standards such as the refinement realm was a concept that had existed even before the launch of God's Domain. Moreover, it had existed for a very long time already, so the theoretical setup behind the concept had long since been perfected. The system was not unique to God's Domain. Only, God's Domain had made the concept of the refinement realm known to the general public. Back then, Feng had learned of the combat realms dividing expert players only after coming in touch with God's Domain. There were a total of 3 realms of refinement: the refinement realm, the flowing water realm, and the void realm. Of these 3 realms, the latter was higher than the former. Meanwhile, only those who managed to enter the refinement realm were considered true top-tier experts of God's Domain. Each one of these experts was capable of going up against an entire army of players by themselves. Meanwhile, above the realms of refinement would be the domain. However, the monsters that had managed to achieve a domain were as rare as a phoenix's feather. One such existence was Martial Dragon. If Feng had not relied on his attributes to suppress Martial Dragon back then, in addition to having the assistance of his personal guard kite, defeating Martial Dragon would have been utterly impossible. Had the fight dragged on, Feng would have been the loser, instead. Currently, although Feng still had the advantage in equipment, this advantage was continuously shrinking. It seems that this Void Realm expert has been prepared to deal with me? Feng could not help but inwardly guess. Even if he could successfully deal with his opponent, the other members of the guild. Chapter 713, Silver. Firewing Empire. Firewing Imperial Capital. Tiexin, were your negotiations successful? A white-browed youth wearing a pair of frosty robes asked, shifting his gaze towards Yuan Tiexin, who had just entered the room. Yuan Tiexin was one of the elders of the secret pavilion, his position within the guild very high. Moreover, he was already 50 years old this year. Yet, despite the white-browed youth directly calling Yuan Tiexin by his personal name, the latter did not show any signs of dissatisfaction. On the contrary, Yuan Tiexin carefully handed over the contract he signed with Feng to the youth in a very respectful manner and said seriously, just like guild leader has surmised, Black Flame was very incisive in making a decision. We can now begin constructing our guild residence at Stone Forest Town immediately. If Feng were here right now, he would definitely be shocked. After all, the secret pavilion's guild leader was actually a young man. Ah, thanks for your hard work. Have Wen Yao bring the kids there, then. This time, we can let those kids get a chance to widen their horizons a little. Ever since God's Domain's launch, the virtual gaming world has not been as nice a place to mingle around in as it had been. The white-browed youth took a glance at the contract and accepted it with satisfaction. He then turned to look at Yuan Tiexin, smiling as he asked, Tiexin, just ask whatever is on your mind. Guild leader, the Flower of Seven Sins has already targeted Zero Wing. If we include those other people as well, there is simply no chance for Zero Wing to protect Stone Forest Town. Aren't we just making an unnecessary move with this? Yuan Tiexin could not help but ask. This can't really be considered an unnecessary move. I am simply hoping to have Zero Wing test out the Flower of Seven Sins. If we can get the others to expose themselves as well, we will have profited in this exchange, the white-browed youth replied, laughing. He then took out a document and placed it before Yuan Tiexin, saying, You'll know once you take a look at this. Yuan Tiexian was inwardly very confused at the youth's words. He promptly began flipping through the document. How could this be? Yuan Tiexian was shocked. That silver has appeared? Is there some sort of mistake here? Zero Wing is merely an upstart guild. Although that Black Flame indeed possesses some ability, it is not to the degree where it is necessary for Silver to take action, right? Whether Silver will be taking action personally or not, I am not sure. However, it is certain that he will be going with the group that's going to attack Zero Wing. If he is willing to take action, this will be the perfect opportunity for us to gather some information on him, the white-browed youth said, shaking his head. Silver was part of the upper echelon of the Flower of Seven Sins. Even for the secret pavilion, obtaining information on Silver was extraordinarily difficult. Meanwhile, a perfect opportunity to do so had just appeared before them, and he did not wish to let the others from the Flower of Seven Sins ruin this opportunity. If the other members of the Flower of Seven Sins defeated Zero Wing swiftly, then a superior like Silver would naturally not take action because Zero Wing simply did not possess this qualification. However, if Zero Wing could force the Flower of Seven Sins into a bitter battle, the possibility of Silver taking action would be much higher. Guild leader, can I go as well? Yuan Tiexian, who was usually calm and collected, currently had a hint of excitement in his eyes. Silver was an existence akin to a legend in the virtual gaming world. Every time he took action, he would cause an earth-shattering sensation. However, the people who knew of him were extremely few, as the various major powers would take the initiative to keep this information hidden, giving ordinary powers no chance to learn about Silver at all. Go if you want to, but don't arouse any suspicions. It will be best if you go in disguise, the white-browed youth replied. He then took out a dark gray ring with purple elvish words engraved on it, the ring itself giving off the glow effect unique to dark gold items. I understand. Yuan Tiexian's heart began beating madly when he heard the youth's words. He then picked up the ring and hurriedly left the guild leader's office. The top of the world, the Dragon's Maw. The Dragon's Maw was a map filled with steep and winding paths, and these paths extended down towards a bottomless crater. The crater looked just like a massive mouth that was trying to devour everything. At this moment, Feng was standing at the entrance of a small path, looking down at the sight before him. No wonder this place is called the Dragon's Maw. It's simply impossible to see the bottom of this crater from out here. Everywhere around this place is sending my alarm bells ringing. This really isn't a place for ordinary people. As Feng took a look at his surroundings, he could feel a premonition of death coming from all around the Dragon's Maw. Yet, strangely enough, he could not see any signs of danger here. There was not a single monster present within his field of vision. Nevertheless, his intuition was warning him that he might lose his life at any given moment, should he set foot on the path before him. This time, however, Feng had no choice but to ignore his intuition and step forward. The assassins from the Flower of Seven Sins possessed overwhelming strength. With a force of over 30 refinement experts, 7 flowing water experts, and 1 void expert, who were all geared in level 30 top-tier equipment, not to mention killing Zero Wing's main force, the group could even attempt to kill a super guild's main force. In Zero Wing, aside from Feng himself being a flowing water expert, there was nobody else within the realms of refinement. Even with the advantage in attributes, Feng knew very clearly that Zero Wing's main force stood no chance at all against so many refinement experts. The outcome would be the same even if they had the power of darkness. After all, if even the members of Zero Wing's main force possessed berserk skills, how could it be possible for these refinement experts not to have obtained one for themselves? Even if not everyone from the Flower of Seven Sins had managed to get their hands on a berserk skill, as long as there were a few who had, these few people could easily annihilate Zero Wing's entire main force. Whether it was Aqua Rose, Violet Cloud, or Fire Dance, all 3 of these girls possessed massive potential. Unfortunately, having potential did not necessarily mean they were strong right now. If they had several years' time to grow. No, even if it were just half a year's time, if he properly guided them and helped them fully realize their potential, no doubt they would be able to cream these experts. However, there was simply not enough time right now. From the report of the secret pavilion, Feng knew that the Flower of Seven Sins was still in the process of making preparations, which might take anywhere from 3 to 5 days. Hence, it was highly possible for them to take action within these 3 to 5 days. However, he did not possess a method to improve everyone's strength significantly within such a short time span. The improvement of combat techniques required time and accumulation of experience, not to mention setting foot into the unfathomable realm of refinement. Despite Fire Dance and Violet Cloud being just a thread away from entering the refinement realm, no matter what they did, they were unable to achieve a breakthrough. Even Feng had no methods to assist them in breaking through. Otherwise, the refinement realm would not have become the great divide that differentiated ordinary experts from top-tier experts in God's domain. Even super guilds would find it very difficult to nurture a refinement expert. Although there was the option of bringing Fire Dance and the others to level up, the possible improvements through this method were limited. Within 4 or 5 days, the most he could do was help everyone in the main force gain 2 more levels. The first reason for this was because everyone was already high-leveled now. The amount of EXP they required to level up was a lot. The other reason was that, while he was capable of killing monsters that were many levels higher than himself, the others could not. At most, they could only serve as support. If the EXP of the monsters he killed were to be split among 100 players, the overall leveling speed of Zero Wing's main force would only be slightly faster than an ordinary expert's. Rather than doing such a futile action, Feng decided to go all out. Although Solomon's sword had been broken into 5 parts, even the weakest fragment could improve a person's strength to a very frightening degree. As long as he could obtain the weapon hidden inside the dragon's maw, it might be possible for him to pull off an upset in the upcoming battle with the Flower of 7 Sins. As Feng walked deeper into the crater along the small path, he used the magic amplification scroll once more to summon a level 52 tier 3 demon, to deal with unexpected situations. However, even after walking for more than 3 hours, Feng did not encounter a single monster. His surroundings were deathly silent. Occasionally, he could also hear agonizing screams as if an invisible ghost were standing right beside him. Not wishing to waste too much time, Feng activated Windrider and quickly descended the path. Finally, after traveling for another 2 hours or so, he arrived at the bottom of the crater. Statues. At the dark bottom, Feng discovered many lifelike stone statues carved in the form of various creatures. Humans, elves, half-orcs, and many more. Every single one of these statues had an expression of horror on their faces. It was as if they had seen something extremely terrifying. Before Feng could further analyze these statues, the sounds of stone shattering entered his ears. He quickly shifted his eyes towards the source of the sounds, discovering more than a dozen black shadows moving about. These black shadows were tiny, roughly the size of an ordinary person's fist. However, their speed was horrifying. It was practically impossible for the naked eye to keep up with them. Most importantly, every single one of these shadows gave Feng a heavy sense of dread. Meanwhile, these black shadows were currently approaching Feng at lightning speed. Chapter 7:14. Engineering Tool. The floor of the crater was very dark. As a result, Feng was caught completely by surprise when the dozen or so shadows suddenly appeared. He did not have time to direct the Tier 3 demon to protect him. Seeing 3 fist-sized shadows fly straight at him, Feng immediately switched the 7 luminaries' rings aura of wind to the aura of earth and activated absolute defense. Suddenly, a pale yellow glow surrounded Feng's body. The black shadows created massive tremors when they crashed into the golden barrier. The powerful impact Feng sent flying more than 10 yards away. After receiving the bombardment, Feng managed to uncover the black shadow's true identity. Quartz Worm, Special Elite. Level 60. HP 420, 000/420, 000. These quartz worms were made of black quartz crystals. In addition to their small bodies and astounding speed, they were extremely difficult to detect in this darkness. Although these special elites had low HP, their attack power was frighteningly high. So many quartz worms would even kill a Tier 2 player instantly. Fortunately, Feng had absolute defense. Even though these quartz worms were level 60 special elites, they could not break through the aura of Earth's activatable skill. However, as the seconds ticked by, more quartz worms started to appear. In the blink of an eye, nearly 60 quartz worms had surrounded Feng. He could not help but shiver as he felt the numerous beady bright red eyes on him. These quartz worms gave Feng no opportunities to escape as they surrounded him and barraged him with a stream of attacks. As each second passed, Feng could hear several dozen crashes. It felt as if someone were firing an automatic rifle at him. Feng had no resistance to offer whatsoever. When absolute defense's duration came to an end, Feng would die. The quartz worms here could drown a player to death. Feng was relieved that he possessed a skill such as absolute defense. Otherwise, even if he came here after reaching level 50 and obtaining his Tier 2 class, death would be the only outcome awaiting him. With only 2 seconds remaining before absolute defense vanished, the Tier 3 demon standing a distance away began to chant an incantation, casting the Tier 3 spell, Oblivion Storm, over the area where Feng stood. Oblivion Storm was a Tier 3, large-scale destruction spell that had an effective area of 50 yards. It could easily envelop Feng and the quartz worms. Suddenly, a massive blue magic array appeared in the air. A massive tornado then descended from the magic array. They were all, Feng and the quartz worms, sucked into the tornado and assaulted by countless wind blades from every direction. Immediately, the quartz worms' HP decreased at a rate visible to the naked eye. Meanwhile, the tornado sent Feng flying into the sky. The moment absolute defense's duration was about to end, Feng immediately stopped the Tier 3 demon from channeling its spell. Suddenly, the tornado vanished. Glancing at the quartz worms that were over 100 meters in the air, Feng realized that the special elites only had a small amount of HP remaining. The lower HP ones had around 10,000 to 20,000, while the higher HP worms had around 30,000 to 50,000. If Feng had not stopped the demon's spell, these quartz worms would have died. However, if Feng had not stopped the spell, he too would have died. Hovering in midair, both player and monsters, neither of which could fly, began to descend. Feng quickly activated gravity liberation, slowing his descent to less than 1/10 of his initial speed. At the same time, he directed the Tier 3 demon below to cast the Tier 3 spell, Scorching Gale, over his and the quartz worm's landing area. Scorching Gale was not a large-scale destruction spell. Rather, it was a cone AoE spell with a range of 20 yards. Not only had Oblivion Storm sent its targets into the air, but it also gathered them into a single area. Hence, Scorching Gale could easily envelop the landing zone. However, due to the difference in their speed of descent, the quartz worms had landed while Feng still floated down. Suddenly, the Tier 3 demon fired countless flame blades from its hands, the burning attack devouring the quartz worms. -104,189. -110,467. Damages over -100,000 appeared above the quartz worms. The low HP special elites could not endure the flaming assault. Only after Scorching Gale finished did Feng land. Loot and quartz worm corpses littered the ground. Meanwhile, Feng's experience bar rose rapidly. The quartz worms were level 60 special elites. Although the EXP they rewarded was less than what ordinary level 60 special elites offered, it was still a lot more than level 60 elites. Moreover, Feng was only level 35 right now. The bonus EXP he obtained from fighting monsters that were 25 levels higher than him was impressive. However, the bonus EXP one could obtain through killing monsters of a higher level was not without limit, capping at 20 levels. Hence, players' EXP would, at most, increase by 20 times. Even so, an increase of 20 times would still provide Feng with an exaggerated amount of EXP. After this brief battle, Feng had gone from 9% of level 35 to 98% of level 35. He was only 2% away from reaching level 36. At this level, he could rank at the top of Star Moon Kingdom's ranking list. Currently, the number 1 player on Star Moon Kingdom's ranking list only approached level 35. They still needed to grind for half a day before crossing the threshold to level 35. This method of leveling isn't bad at all. Feng could not help his grin as he looked at the EXP he had obtained. Unfortunately, special elites were not easily discovered. Even in the Stoneclaw Mountains, an Azura mode regional dungeon, so many special elites would not appear at a single time. In a group of 100 elite monsters or so, roughly 8 or 9 special elites might tag along. Hence, It was nearly impossible to find large groups of special elites such as the quartz worms to grind on. Moreover, the Tier 3 demon's Tier 3 spell, Oblivion Storm, had a relatively long cooldown of 70 minutes. Unfortunately, the demon did not have any other combination attack that could kill a group of level 60 special elites instantly. Most importantly, it would be very difficult for Feng to locate so many quartz worms again. After Feng had wiped out the wave of quartz worms, silence returned to the area. The only quartz worms in the area were the corpses on the ground. Although the quartz worms had not provided much EXP, the loot they dropped was relatively good. Moreover, Feng had the luck increasing Icarus's heart. The 60+ quartz worms had dropped quite a bit of level 50 or above bronze and mysterious iron equipment. The special elites had even dropped an engineering design. Glare Bomb. Feng was delighted. One could produce many interesting items with engineering. However, very few engineering items could be used in combat. Take the Frost Grenade for example. Not only could it cause damage, but it also possessed a control effect. Sadly, only master engineers could produce such items. Moreover, the designs were extremely difficult to obtain. Yet, if one tried to purchase these items, their prices were extraordinarily high. Ordinary players could not afford to use them. The Glare Bomb was not as advanced as the Frost Grenade. It could not inflict any damage. However, it was very easy to produce. The materials required were not particularly rare. Hence, it was one of the most common tools in field battles. The Glare Bomb could temporarily blind all creatures within its range, though its effect on players was reduced. After Feng finished arranging the loot and was about to leave the area, for some reason, the external layer of stone on the statues began to fade, revealing these statues' original appearance. Every one of these restored individuals radiated a frightening aura. Feng felt an immense pressure from these creatures and was overcome by a desire to flee. However, these unpetrified individuals had noticed Feng. Chapter 7:15, Thunder Emperor. With the eyes of these revived individuals on him, Feng did not dare to make any sudden movements. Every one of these NPCs, be it human, elf or half-orc, had an astounding and intimidating level. Level 150. Even a common monster at this level could kill Feng effortlessly, not to mention the humans and elves, both of which were Tier 3 classes. "Young man, was it you who saved us?" A middle-aged human male asked as he turned to Feng, his previous aura vanishing suddenly. This middle-aged man was a Tier 3 Great Mage. Even in White River City, he would be considered an incredibly powerful individual. Players would find it difficult to gain an audience with such a character. "I'm not really sure. I merely cleared out the quartz worms residing here," Feng said truthfully, calming after seeing no evil intent among these NPCs. Hearing Feng mention the quartz worms, these level 150 NPCs examined their surroundings, bewilderment appearing on their faces. It was obvious that they, too, were unsure of the situation. After these NPCs had a quiet chat among themselves, the Tier 3 Great Mage named Carrion Walker walked up to Feng. "Although we are not sure of what happened exactly, we're certain that your actions saved us. As a show of our gratitude, we've unanimously decided to gift you this item," Carrion Walker said. He then took out a purple-gold, lightning-shaped emblem and carefully handed it over to Feng. "This emblem is our Imperial Army's honorary emblem. We hope that you will accept it." Feng accepted the emblem. When he inspected the information, he was shocked. Thunder Emperor's Emblem. This is the honorary emblem of the Thunder Beast Empire. This grants the wielder honorary citizenship within the Thunder Beast Empire. Wasn't the Thunder Beast Empire destroyed long ago? Feng knew quite a bit about God's Domain's history. The Thunder Beast Empire had been one of the extremely powerful empires in God's Domain. During its peak, its territory encompassed over a dozen kingdoms. On the continent of God's Domain, not a single kingdom or empire dared to act against it. The ruler of the Thunder Beast Empire had been the Thunder Emperor Kaiser. However, according to God's Domain's historical records, to pursue eternal life and become a god, Kaiser had broken many taboos. As a result, his actions had earned the anger of the gods as the imperial capital had suddenly disappeared. Following the capital's disappearance, the Thunder Beast Empire had split into multiple kingdoms. At this point, the Thunder Beast Empire had long since faded from existence. Naturally, this Thunder Emperor's emblem also held no meaning whatsoever. Young adventurer, although we have been freed, we have many companions still living under the curse. We hope that you can save them. If you succeed, we will present to you the Empire's greatest treasure, Carrion Walker said as he looked at Feng, his clear expectation reflecting in his eyes. Are you not coming with me? Feng could not help but ask. Carrion Walker shook his head and said, Our time in this world has long since run out. Although the curse has been lifted, our strength wanes. Moreover, as we approach that place, we lose strength faster. At this point, only you can save our companions. All right then. I promise you. Where do I have to go to save your companions? When Feng heard about the Empire's treasure, he thought that it might be related to the weapon he hunted. The clue he had obtained had indicated that the weapon hid within the dragon's maw. As it had been an extremely powerful empire in the past, the Thunder Beast Empire must have amassed countless treasures. The weapon he looked for might very well occupy the Empire's treasury. Rather than searching for the weapon blindly, he might as well accept this quest. We are merely people who had escaped the Imperial capital. Our companions are still trapped in the capital. This is a map of the Imperial capital. Hopefully, it will be of some help to you, Carrion Walker said. He then took out a map of the Imperial capital and passed it to Feng. System. Epic Quest, Empire's Past, accepted. Quest content. Save the people inside the Imperial capital within 10 days. If the quest is not completed within the allotted time, you will be inflicted with the petrification curse. Rewards unknown. An epic quest with a time limit of 10 days? Feng was immediately stunned upon hearing the system notification. He had never imagined that the quest would be so difficult. However, after giving it some thought, he found it reasonable. The weapon he sought was no trivial item. How could the game offer it up so easily? After Feng accepted the map, he summoned another Tier 3 demon. With 2 Tier 3 demons leading the way, it would be much easier to deal with the quartz worms. Now that Feng had a map, his progression into the Dragon's Maw's maze of the underground tunnels became a lot easier. After Feng reached the Dragon's Maw's second underground layer, many demonic beasts appeared in the dark tunnels. With a single glance, Feng counted over 500. The monsters squeezed tightly together as they blocked Feng's path. Giant Petrified Rat, Demonic Beast, Elite Rank. Level 60. HP 300, 000/300, 000. Without hesitation, Feng directed the 2 Tier 3 demons to clear out these rats. When the giant rats saw the 2 Tier 3 demons, they released ear-piercing screeches. One pounced on the Tier 3 demons. They showed no fear of the 2 Tier 3 demons. Normally, even monsters would fear a powerful enemy, yet these giant rats were unafraid. Feng used one Tier 3 demon to attract these giant petrified rats' attention, while the other demon cast a Tier 3 spell. The petrified rats had very high attack power. Even against a Tier 3 demon, their bites dealt over -1000 damage. If these elites faced an MT player of the same tier, they could easily devour half of said player's HP. Meanwhile, these giant petrified rats attacked in groups of a dozen or so. They would instantly devour players of the same level. Only a Tier 3 demon with 9 million HP could withstand their assault for long. This is... Feng suddenly noticed that the Tier 3 demon that held off the rats began to show signs of petrification. A portion of its body had already begun to turn a dull gray. Could this be why even Tier 4 players have fallen here? Feng did not believe that these giant rats were capable of defeating a Tier 4 player with only their powerful bites. However, it was a different story if they could petrify their targets. Looking at the Tier 3 demon statistics, although it had lost less than 1% of its HP, an additional petrification value had appeared. Currently, the demon displayed a petrification value of 0.84%, and with each bite from the giant rats, that value increased slightly. Needless to say, once this petrification value reached 100%, even if the Tier 3 demon still had 100% of its HP remaining, it would turn into stone. So this is how they work. Feng could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had only used his summoned demons to attack. If he had faced these monsters himself, the consequences would have been dire. The Tier 3 demons he summoned could last 5 hours. With the increment rate of the petrification value, although they would not last a full 5 hours against these monsters, they should have no problems fighting for 3 or 4 hours. Fortunately, he could summon a new demon once every 3 hours. In other words, he could rely on his summoned demons to fight for him, having no need to worry about being petrified or any hindrance to his progress. Chapter 716. Ruins of the Imperial Capital. Under Feng's control, the 2 level 52 Tier 3 demons quickly swept through all of the giant petrified rats in the stone hall. Following the clear sound of a system notification, a golden glow encompassed Feng. He had finally reached level 36. Without hesitation, Feng placed the 10 free attribute points he had just obtained into agility, partially making up for the loss of 25 agility he had previously suffered. The giant petrified rats were level 60 elites, and they dropped valuable loot. Aside from some materials, they dropped plenty of level 50 and above common and bronze equipment. In the outside world, Feng would have to grind far longer to obtain so many items. Ha! A Tier 2 skill book. Feng was slightly surprised as he picked up a book decorated with silver silk from the pile. In God's domain, the majority of a class's basic skills were learned from NPC instructors, while some of the slightly more powerful skills were obtained from quests. As for high-tiered skills, however, one could gain them by trading the legacy skill point that the system provided. Tier 0 skills could generally be found in the fields or dungeons. However, Tier 1 skills practically never dropped, increasing the difficulty of obtaining them exponentially. In truth, the majority of the Tier 1 skills that monsters dropped could be gained by trading in legacy skill points. If one obtained such a skill for monsters, they would not have to waste their legacy points to unlock said skill and could spend the points on learning other skills. Ordinary Tier 1 skills generally cost 2 legacy skill points to learn. Meanwhile, players only obtained 1 point for every 3 levels. Hence, a player would have to level up 6 times to learn an ordinary Tier 1 skill. If Tier 1 skills were already so expensive, there was no need to mention Tier 2 skills. Even the most common Tier 2 skill cost 4 legacy skill points. One had to level up 12 times to learn one. Hence, in God's domain, skill books were extremely valuable. Currently, the going rate for an ordinary Tier 1 skill book could even rival a piece of level 30 fine gold equipment. If it were a powerful Tier 1 skill such as a life-saving dash, AoE attack dash, control removal dash, or burst-type skill book, no one would sell it even for the price of a level 30 dark gold weapon, much less anything fine gold ranked. Weapons and equipment would be discarded as players increased in level. However, skills would not. Nobody would complain about too many skills. The drop rate of Tier 1 skill books in a large-scale Hell Mode team dungeon was roughly 2%. However, in large-scale Hell Mode team dungeons that were level 50 and above, the drop rate of Tier 2 skill books was less than 0.3%. Obtaining one was mostly due to luck. Hence, Feng was astonished when he realized that the giant petrified rats had dropped a Tier 2 skill book. Feng checked the skill book, discovering that it was the Tier 2 general melee skill, Dark Ghost. Dark Ghost, Tier 2 skill. Split yourself into 4 and attack simultaneously. Every doppelganger deals 100% of the main body's damage. Duration of 4 seconds. Cooldown 2 minutes. Tier requirement: Tier 2 class or above. I recall someone exchanging this Dark Ghost skill for an epic item with relatively good attributes in the past. I never thought I would find it here. Feng was speechless. General skill books were much more valuable than class skill books as they could be used in a variety of battles. It was especially true for this Dark Ghost skill. If he suddenly split himself into 4 identical copies, who would dare to approach him casually? Hence, among Tier 2 general skills, Dark Ghost ranked relatively near the top. Many melee players had sought after this skill. If used during a crucial moment, the skill could turn the tide of battle. It's a pity that I can't learn it yet. I'll have to wait until I reach Tier 2. Feng tucked the Dark Ghost skill book away in satisfaction. He then directed the Tier 3 demons to advance. The second underground floor was like a massive maze. Even with the map in hand, Feng had a very difficult time progressing through it. Throughout his journey, he would occasionally encounter giant petrified rats' nests. When he met such encounters, he had no choice but to stop and clear out the nest. Otherwise, he could not venture further. Moreover, due to the petrification issue, it became far more difficult to control the Tier 3 demon that held off the giant rats. In the end, Feng gave up on the Tier 3 demon altogether and let the giant rats attack it. With the Tier 3 demon's HP and Feng's life bloom, the giant petrified rates would never kill it. Although killing the rats was time-consuming, the fact that these elites could drop Tier 2 skill books motivated Feng. Moreover, he could also obtain a large sum of EXP. While Feng explored the Dragon's Maw's second underground floor, he instructed the Dark God's Legion, which had been training all this time, take action, delving deeper into the Stoneclaw Mountains. As an Azura mode regional dungeon, the Stoneclaw Mountains was somewhat special. Not only were the monsters inside the dungeon more powerful, but the loot was also better than elsewhere. The monsters also dropped magic crystals. More importantly, the monsters dropped barrier crystal balls. If one collected a sufficient number of barrier crystal balls, they could use them to form a barrier. The barrier would suppress the strength of contained enemies. It was just like the demon-suppressing barrier that Blue Frost's team had used when they faced the level 40 Great Lord Noya. The barrier had greatly reduced Noya's combat power, making it a lot easier to raid the Great Lord. The barrier crystal balls were similar in this aspect. Only, the barrier crystal balls were somewhat different from magic scrolls. Generally, magic scrolls were one-use items. Barrier crystal balls, however, could be used multiple times. Only, each use would expend a lot of magic crystals. During God's Domain's initial stages, players were both low-leveled and low-tiered. Hence, most felt helpless against even High Lord-ranked monsters, not to mention Great Lords. Raiding these monsters simply required too much from players at this stage of the game. Perhaps the main god system had taken this into consideration. Since a player's strength was limited, the only other way to defeat these Grand Lord-ranked bosses was to suppress their strength. However, aside from quests, there were practically no methods or tools that could suppress boss-level monsters. Bosses of large-scale team dungeons had been a roadblock for many large guilds. However, after the Stoneclaw Mountains had appeared, the various guilds had discovered the barrier crystal ball in the dungeon's inner region. This had allowed the guilds to reduce the difficulty of large-scale team dungeons, significantly increasing their raiding speed. A guild only had a limited number of experts. Normally, only these experts were barely able to clear large-scale team dungeons. Large-scale team dungeons also had cooldown times. Hence, this had resulted in the rarity of top-tier equipment. However, if a guild could lower the difficulty of a large-scale team dungeon and allow players that were not quite experts to clear it, the acquisition of top-tier equipment would naturally skyrocket. Feng was not confident in dealing with the Flower of Seven Sins adequately. Against the Star Alliance, however, he had plenty of confidence. The best method to crush the Star Alliance swiftly was to increase Zero Wing's overall strength. After all, a battle between guilds could not be settled by an individual. Currently, the various large guilds were grinding in the Stoneclaw Mountains' outer area. They avoided the inner region as they had deemed the danger to be higher than the potential rewards. The Flower of Seven Sins was already preparing to deal with Zero Wing. However, it would not be wise for Feng to send the main force into the Stoneclaw Mountains. But it was a different story for the Dark God's Legion. Originally, the Dark God's Legion's members were already powerful as individuals. After taking into account the power of darkness, they could easily venture into the Stoneclaw Mountains' inner region to obtain the barrier crystal balls. Under Feng's command, the Dark God's Legion had no trouble obtaining several dozen barrier crystal balls. This was enough to outfit several 100-man teams to raid the hard-mode Frost Prison. Time passed quickly. After a day of travel through the second floor, Feng finally arrived at the staircase leading to the floor below. Meanwhile, Feng was already level 37. He had fully recovered the 25 agility he had lost. The instant Feng's foot landed on the staircase, the view before him changed. He was transported to a fog-covered city. The sound of a system notification suddenly reached his ears. System. You have discovered the ruins of the Imperial capital. Grinding mastery points. Chapter 717. Taboo City. The mana density here is intense. Standing in the mist, Feng suddenly felt his mind become clear and ethereal. He could see the mist's true colors. In God's domain, when players found themselves in places with high mana density, their minds would clear, and they would feel more energetic. This greatly aided in the improvement of their skill completion rates and combat techniques. With such a high mana density, the boost one could get in this area is no less than the 100-berry wine. If players fight and level up here, they could see improvements at least 5 or 6 times faster. It's a pity that this area isn't easy to access. When Feng opened his system interface, he discovered that he could not contact with the outside world at all. He had also discovered undead roaming down the lifeless city streets. Fortunately, they were not very high-leveled. Suffering Soul, Undead, Elite Rank. Level 60. HP 450, 000/450, 000. Ghoul, Undead, Special Elite. Level 60. HP 700, 000/700, 000. These half-transparent suffering souls and ghouls wandering about the city were not particularly numerous. A level 60 party should be able to handle these monsters very easily. Whether it was leveling up or improving one's skill completion rate, grinding monsters here would be beneficial. After examining his surroundings briefly, Feng took out an isolation scroll and used it. He then descended from the rooftop carefully and headed towards the palace indicated on the map. The city had long since died. Feng could see various statues haunting the city streets. These statues had all been citizens who had received the curse. However, it was unlikely that killing those undead would lift the curse. Feng would have to deal with the problem at its source. Based on Feng's understanding of the Thunder Beast Empire, only one person was capable of cursing an entire city. Thunder Emperor Kaiser. Emperor Kaiser had been a Tier 5 sword saint. He had only been a step away from becoming a Tier 6 god. Unfortunately, it had been so close yet so far. To players, the promotion from a Tier 5 class to Tier 6 required great opportunities, luck, and strength. It was even more so for an NPC. For example, in the past, even the Dark Gold Guard Kite, with his vast potential, could only be promoted to Tier 5. It was practically impossible for him to reach the realm of Tier 6. According to the legend, in order to pursue eternal life, Emperor Kaiser had mobilized his empire to carry out a taboo. Looking at it now, it was highly possible that said taboo was related to the curse currently plaguing the Imperial capital. Damn it! The city is already in ruins, so why are there still guards? Feng stood on the roof of a building one street away from the palace, his eyes locked onto the mechanical guards stationed on either side of the palace gate. Thunder Beast Guard, Grand Lord. Level 200. HP? / The Thunder Beast Guards' levels were just too high, so Feng could not see how much HP they had. However, he could confirm one thing. Their HP was mind-bogglingly high. Normally, Grand Lords had 6 HP bars displayed. The Thunder Beasts had 10. Furthermore, there were a total of 8 Thunder Beast Guards. The Thunder Beast Empire's strength left Feng in awe. Feng had visited plenty of empires before. However, this was his first time seeing such powerful mechanical guards. The palace was also protected by a magic array. In order to enter the palace, Feng would either have to destroy the magic array or enter through the front gate. The first option of destroying the magic array was obviously unrealistic. Even a Tier 6 god would find it difficult to destroy a magic array that carried such dense mana, not to mention a Tier 1 swordsman like Feng. Yet, entering through the main gate was also unrealistic. Even a level 200 Tier 4 class would not dare to provoke 8 level 200 Grand Lords simultaneously. Feng was only a level 37 tier 1 swordsman. The Thunder Beast guards would send him to oblivion long before he ever reached the palace gates. Feng had thought of using a tier 3 demon as baits. However, due to the gap in levels, rather than luring the guards away, he might draw the guards' aggro himself. Do I have to give up just like this? Feng was frustrated. He observed his surroundings in hopes of finding a solution. After watching from the rooftop for some time, Feng suddenly discovered something interesting. There were plenty of undead roaming the streets in front of the palace. However, not a single suffering soul came within 200 yards of the palace gates. Only a few ghouls would wander near. Meanwhile, when a few occasional ghouls and suffering soul tried to wander towards the gates, the Thunder Beast guards vanished them immediately. Only those few ghouls remained unharmed. The Thunder Beast guards should be absolutely neutral. They should regard both players and monsters as enemies. So why are those few ghouls safe? Feng was very curious. He even summoned a tier 3 demon, directing it to capture a few ghouls from elsewhere and throwing the monsters towards the main gate. Without exception, the Thunder Beast guards annihilated every ghoul. This is interesting. Feng could not help his smile as he watched the few ghouls wander about before the gates. He then directed the tier 3 demon to hide and waited for those few ghouls to wander out of the restricted area. Minutes and seconds passed quickly. However, Feng did not rush. To Feng, who had taken on many adventures and quests in God's domain, patience was the foundation of success. After more than an hour, a ghoul finally exited the 200-yard restricted area. Like an eagle hunting its prey, Feng directed the tier 3 demon to nab the ghoul. No matter how hard the ghoul attacked and struggled, it could not break free from the demon's grasp. With a flap of its black wings, the demon put more distance between itself and the restricted area. The tier 3 demon then brought the ghoul before Feng. Its hand gripped the ghoul tightly, preventing the special elite from moving. Meanwhile, Feng activated omniscient eyes to inspect just what differentiated this ghoul from the others. The ghoul was actually able to deter even the Thunder Beast guards from attacking it. The ghoul had mutated from a human's corpse. It still wore the noble's clothes it had worn in life. There had been nobles among the ghouls the guards had killed. Could it be that this ghoul had possessed a higher rank while it was alive? After observing the ghoul for some time, Feng failed to discover any clues. However, he did not believe that the main god system would have him complete this high-level quest for no good reason. For a quest in a level 60 map, even a legendary quest, level 60 players should be able to complete it. However, even level 200 players would not be able to get past the Thunder Beast guards before him, much less level 60 players. At the very minimum, it would take a team of 10 level 200 tier 4 players to defeat them. Forget it. Let's kill it as an experiment. In any case, there are a few more ghouls I can experiment with. In the end, failing to discover any peculiarities, Feng had the tier 3 demon finish off this ghoul. When the ghoul died, it transformed into a bundle of meat and green liquid. It also dropped a few silver coins and some other items. Its loot was no different from the ghouls Feng had killed before. Ha! This is... You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.